The Lord of the Depths, a Game of Thrones tale. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Sucking Full Money? I thought you would ask for something else. Dany blinked. She really thought Jack would come up with a new move or something. After all, Jack's tricks were too many, which made her hate and desire. I'm short of money. To be honest, I have nearly 7,000 unsullied under my command, and there are also a large number of crew members waiting for me to support. I'm poor. The crying child gets the milk, especially Denise, which is very rich and delicious. Then how much do you want? There will be many places to spend money in the future, and I don't have much extra. I even gave you my people. You can't deduct all of me. This sentence directly embarrassed Jack, who was in the state of a sage. If he had known earlier, he would not have fired that shot in the morning. Now he is a little embarrassed to ask for money. Then I don't want money. Give me the higher level slaves of Meereen and use these higher level slaves to pay for the money. Dany remained calm on the surface, but she was actually happy in her heart. She knew clearly who her supporters were and who her enemies were. After Meereen lost the slave trade and olive trees, the economy would definitely decline for a period of time. This is inevitable. Therefore, those who can become teachers, clerks, bed slaves, doctors, and priests after selling themselves are not her allies. These people have the conditions to live a rich life, and naturally they will not be willing to stay in Meereen and suffer poverty, so it is better to sell them all for money. Now Jack took the initiative to propose it, which just saved a lot of time. Okay, let's use these high level slaves in exchange. Do you want to take these people with you? Take them away. I chose a small island in the south as a stopover for the fleet. I need some high level slaves who can read and write to help. Jack revealed his situation a little. Is that so? I will ask someone to count the high level slaves when I come back. You can take these high level slaves away at any time. So, do you have any way to help me get through the early stage? Jack pinched the soft decompression artifact with his hand and then provided Dany with some reference opinions. The first is the issue of the governance of Meereen. We need a simple and practical bureaucratic system to rule Meereen. So I divided Meereen into 13 special districts for regional management. We don't have talented people, so we will select them from the local nobles in Meereen. Wait, those nobles almost hate us to death. How can they help us willingly? Jack then briefly told Dany about his plan, but omitted the details of receiving a bribe of $500,000. After listening to this, Dany had a new understanding of Jack's political methods, but she still asked with some concern, are the 11 nobles you selected really reliable? We don't need to consider whether they are reliable or not. What we need to do is to make them reliable. And don't worry, once they take office as governors of the special district, they will be labeled as the Queen's Party. They have no choice but to rely on you. And you underestimate the control of power over people's hearts. People's greed is like a rolling stone on a mountain. Once it starts, it can't be stopped. What about the Imperial Conference? If the power is delegated to them, and they collect taxes and manage, then the Imperial Conference will be meaningless. Jack shook his hand. The Imperial Conference itself is meaningless. I suggest that the Imperial Conference be abolished directly, and a Round Table Conference be established. Then the Round Table Conference composed of 14 members will replace the functions of the Imperial Conference. Simply put, all the positions of the Imperial Conference are set as the principal and deputy positions, and the power of 7 people is dispersed to 14 people. There is no change in essence. This will not only disperse power, but also attract the 11 nobles. They are trying their best to enter the Round Table Conference. Jack's idea is very simple. He divides the 7 positions of the Imperial Council into left and right. For example, his position as Prime Minister can be divided into the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. As for whether his power will be challenged by the Deputy Prime Minister, Jack doesn't care. The strength of his own power is a basis for safeguarding power. There is no need to rush to fill the positions of the other 14 people. First, choose 7 people you trust to serve as senior officials. The remaining 7 positions with relatively small powers can be spread out. Let them see how others perform. Let them roll up their sleeves like crazy, and you will reap the benefits. Daenerys looked at Jack in surprise, and then there was a 2-minute hot kiss. Jack's method was too good. This is not Westeros. She can set up a round table meeting without any obstacles. The power of the ministers is divided, which is naturally more convenient for her to control. In addition, with the position of the governor of the 13 special districts, it is entirely possible to win over a group of nobles who are loyal to her and directly realize the bureaucracy from scratch. Dany wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth, changed her sitting position, and sat directly on Jack's legs. She asked excitedly, "What about the economy? Do you have any good ideas?" According to Jack's method, the management problems of Meereen can be basically solved, but the economic problems have not been solved. The economy is a bit complicated. We can't solve it in a short time. We can only wait for the vines and olive trees to grow again, and make money from wine and olive oil. Hearing Jack's words, Dany's little face immediately became full of praise, but Jack's next words made Dany happy again. Although there is nothing we can do about wine and olive oil, we can still intervene from other places. The first is the Colosseum. The Colosseum will remain open, but we can use the reason of providing security for the Unsullied to require the owner of the Colosseum to give up 30% of the profits. Then we can control the opening bets in the Colosseum, such as occasionally bringing out a newcomer with championship potential to challenge the old strongman, and we make money based on the odds. Not all gladiators like to be free and be ordinary people. On the contrary, most gladiators are eager for the cheers of the audience and the bonuses after victory. So gladiators are not necessarily slaves, but anyone who voluntarily participates, and they can become gladiators. Jack's first solution is to continue the operation of the Colosseum. Many gladiators have adapted to the life in the Colosseum. They are eager for blood and fighting, the honor of victory and generous bonuses. Gladiators are not necessarily slaves, but can be anyone. In other words, any free people who are short of money or eager to fight can sign a contract with the Colosseum to become a gladiator. Therefore, Jack can set a high winning streak bonus to attract the freemen to join the battle, and then make a lot of money by operating the market behind the scenes. As the Prime Minister and the Queen's right hand, he can arrange this matter personally, and the bribes he can collect from it are definitely not low. For things like corruption and bribery, although Jack has never eaten pork, he has seen pigs run. In ancient times, there was Heshen, a minister of great power, and now there is Zaodehan, who does not spend a penny. These are all good examples of Jack. Chapter 52 Population Arrangements. Secondly, if we overthrow the slave system, we must have a new system to provide jobs for the freed slaves, that is, work. Otherwise, they will be idle all day and there will be unrest in the end. So we can build some official blacksmith shops, tailor shops and other shops, and then recruit other people as apprentices. Apprentices have no wages, only food and accommodation, and can choose to stay or leave after learning the skills. If you stay to work, you will be given a suitable salary, and there will be benefits at the end of each year, and the salary will be slightly increased in the second year. Then we will select some young and strong people to form a corps of freemen to go to the Kessel Pass, where we will build fortifications and train soldiers. We will build manors and hire slaves who have no skills. We only need to provide food and very low wages to let them plant olive trees and vines. There are also canals to manage salt-contaminated land, build roads to the Kessel Pass, and defensive castles along the way, all of which require people. In addition, I'm willing to take in some slaves to relieve the pressure on Meereen. In this way, it is also spending money to get through the early stage, but it avoids many problems and makes full use of all available resources. In the original drama, Dany has been spending money to support the slaves after freeing them, which has led to her continuous investment without any positive returns. Once Dany has no money, the food in Meereen will become less and less. Without food, any liberator will be driven out of office. Finally, it's the issue of allies. Meereen has allies, so we naturally have to win over allies. The Lazzers are a very good choice. They are not only good at growing food, but also good at grazing. Dany suddenly reacted at this time. So you placed the new legion of free people in the pass of Kessa? Yes, come, I'll reward you with a kiss. In the original book, Danny abolished slavery, and Meereen lost the means of economic exchanges with the outside world. The land in the Slavers' Bay was covered with salt by the Valyrians during the Valyria-Gis War. Therefore, most of the land in Meereen is uncultivated land, and food is mainly obtained through foreign trade. One is through sea trade, and the other is river trade. There is a river called Skahazaban next to the city of Meereen, which leads all the way inland. At the end of the river is the settlement of the agricultural nation, the Lazar, where Khal Drogo was injured and died of infection in the first season. The Lazar would trade grain with Meereen. If you want to trade grain with the Lazar Plains, you must pass through the Kether Pass. This is the only way, and must be guarded. Only in this way can the grain price in Meereen be stabilized. Jack rewarded Danny with a 1-minute kiss. Regardless of Danny's panting, he continued, we must not only maintain normal trade with the Lazar people, but also give up some of our interests to win over the Lazar people. Then, how are you going to give up your interests? Danny slowly recovered her breath. If we raise the price of grain by 10%, the Lazar people will definitely be willing to sell grain to us, and then send the Unsullied to provide them with protection. As a price, they only need to pay some grain. When it comes to the Unsullied, Danny suddenly becomes serious. The Unsullied are the foundation of my rule. If we send too many Unsullied, the nobles in the city may be ready to make a move. There is no need to send too many Unsullied. After liberating the slaves, we will not engage in slave trade. An important source of income for the Dothraki is to trade with the 3 cities of Slavers Bay with the captured population. Now that there is no slave trade, the Dothraki will not approach Slavers Bay to plunder. 2,000 people are enough to show sincerity, and then cooperate with a part of the Free People's Army. Danny nodded. If this is the case, it is acceptable. If the food supply can be guaranteed, then these prices are not considered prices. Providing protection for the cowardly sheep people and then obtaining food is a normal transaction. But in the past, most of the sheep people's food could only be sold to slave owners at a low price. Then the centaurs often come to rob them. Sometimes, as soon as they sell their grain, they are sent to the slave owners who buy the grain. Not only does the grain belong to them, but even the people have become slave owners. Therefore, the Lazar people are most hostile to the centaurs, followed by the slave owners. Therefore, Jack's condition is to win over the Lazar people, which is considered to be a relatively stable food base for Meereen. However, Danny, we must pay attention to the training of the Freeman's Legion, otherwise we can't defend the Kether Pass, and everything will be empty talk. Well, don't worry, I understand the importance of the Kether Pass. I will let Grey Worm lead some 2nd level officers to train the Freeman's Legion. How many people do you think are appropriate? The population of Meereen, plus the surrounding manors, towns, and villages, is at least 2 million. We can probably pull out 20,000 Freeman's Legion. In my opinion, we should recruit 18,000 people and divide them into 3 legions, named after your 3 good sons. Okay, let's do it. Do you have any other opinions? Danny looked at Jack expectantly. Jack certainly had other ways. He had followed an upmaster named the Great Alliance of Time Travelers, which explained in detail how to make money by traveling to the ancient world. P.S. Brothers who are interested can go and have a look. It's Dowian. Maybe one day you will travel through time, right? There are explanations for refined salt, glass, soap, paper making, curved plows, advanced water wheels, high purity alcohol, etc. Although Jack didn't remember all of them, he remembered most of them. The part he didn't remember can be studied by himself. These are monopoly level technologies with great ability to make money. Naturally, the development of Atlantis should be considered first. However, it is possible to consider looking for distributors in Meereen in the future, which can also help boost the economy of Meereen. Speaking of this, I don't know if Carrick's has delivered the letter. As early as Danny entered the city, Jack knew that the general situation was set, so he immediately wrote a letter and asked Carrick's to send it to Seychelles to notify Newgate to arrange an empty ship to pick up people immediately, take the purchased food along the way, and make a fortune in Meereen. Jack did not announce the establishment of Atlantis, and the name of the Atlantis caravan was the Big Wave Merchants. At the same time, the caravan did not reveal the identity of Atlantis. So even if Meereen and Essos go to war, as long as Atlantis or the big wave merchants do not send out the iconic 13 giant ships, Jack can still purchase food at lower prices in other places. Even relying on various commodities developed in the future, Atlantis will become a top-rich country that is comparable to the Iron Bank, or even surpasses the Iron Bank. However, the subsequent population transfer still needs to be planned carefully, and the identity must not be exposed. Exposing the identity is a small matter. Not being able to make a fortune in silence is the biggest loss. Jack deliberately sank his face. That's all. I can't do anything else. I have been drained mentally, and the next thing is physical. Please, Queen of Meereen, you don't want the regime of Meereen to be unstable, do you? Chapter 53, Decentralization, Roundtable Meeting. Soon the time came to the next day, and Daenerys summoned her men, including Missandei, Grey Worm, Aggo, Joggo, Rakharrow, Jorah, Barristan, all came, and of course, Jack was indispensable. In addition to them, there were 11 nobles. At this time, all 11 people stood stiffly below, staring at Grey Worm and others. Although most of the policies were proposed by Jack, he couldn't say them all, but let Daenerys say them. Jack's current stage goal is very clear, which is to support Dany to sit firmly in the position of queen. Only when Dany's position is firmly established, his power as prime minister will continue to expand. With the continuous expansion of power, he can continue to suck blood, and Atlantis can better survive the early growth stage. Dany sat on the throne. I decided to stay in Meereen and learn the way of governance. When I have enough ships, I will cross the sea to take back the Iron Throne that belongs to me. Dany first stated her plan. As a leader, she must establish stage goals for her men. Jorah and others chose to follow Dany, and Dany naturally had to give them benefits and power. Then Dany began to reward people. She appointed Jorah as the commander of the Meereen garrison, and recruited 2,000 people to be responsible for the security of Meereen. Then she asked Aggo, Joggo, Rakharrow and Barristan to serve as the Queen's Iron Guard, with Barristan as the captain and Rakharrow as the deputy captain. Missandei was also appointed as the steward of the True Dragon Tower, which is the big pyramid where Dany is. Finally, Dany took out 2 medals and said, from now on, the Royal Council will be dissolved and replaced by the Round Table Conference. At the same time, the seats will be changed to 14, and the original seats of the Royal Council will all be set as positive and negative. The 2 medals in my hand, the gold one is the Prime Minister, and the silver one is the Deputy Prime Minister. The job of the Deputy Prime Minister is to assist the Prime Minister in handling affairs. Hearing Dany's words, the 11 nobles who were originally a little restrained suddenly became active. A few smart ones have guessed the intention of Daenerys calling them over. Jack Poseidon, I'm here, Your Majesty. I now officially grant you the position of Hand of the Queen. Your talent is obvious to all. After that, Dany stood up and walked in front of Jack, and then personally put the badge of the Hand of the Queen on Jack. Prime Minister Jack, the position of Deputy Prime Minister is still vacant. Do you have any recommended candidates? Dany asked. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect Jack to have such an important position in Daenerys' heart. You know, everyone guessed that the role of the Round Table Conference to replace the Royal Conference is nothing more than to disperse the power of the ministers. But now Daenerys actually gave the position of Deputy Prime Minister to Jack for recommendation. Wouldn't the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister wear the same pants? Your Majesty, I do have a candidate, but... Dany smiled and said, tell me about it. I believe that the Prime Minister's choice will not disappoint me. Then I'm relieved. Then Jack looked at the Meereen noble faction. The sudden look made everyone nervous. Could it be that the Deputy Prime Minister will be chosen from among them? Especially Mando. His heartbeat began to speed up. Is it possible? Is it possible? Your Majesty, I think Mando Gru is quite capable, upright, and good at thinking. He is fully qualified for the position of Deputy Prime Minister. As soon as Jack finished speaking, the other 10 nobles looked at Mando in shock. They knew that Mando had stayed in Jack's house the longest, but they didn't expect to get such a benefit. Okay, in that case, let Mando Gru serve as Deputy Prime Minister. Then Dany came to Mando and put the silver badge on Mando's chest. You are recommended by the Prime Minister. I believe in his vision. Don't let me down. Your Majesty, I will definitely not let you down. Mando said excitedly. I didn't expect that he would transform from a small noble on the edge of power into a big man in the power center of Meereen. Deputy Prime Minister, above 10,000 people, below 2 people. Jack smiled and nodded to Mando. Congratulations, Lord Mando. Please bear with me in the future work. Lord Zengxiang is too polite. Please give me more guidance in the future work. After the two of them exchanged pleasantries, Danny announced the formation of a new Free People's Army and the recruitment of workers. The recruitment work was handed over to Grey Worm, and a total of 18,000 people were recruited, divided into the Black Dragon Army, the White Dragon Army and the Green Dragon Army. Grey Worm, this matter will be handed over to you first. Recruit a total of 20,000 people, and then eliminate 2,000 people through training, leaving 18,000 relatively outstanding people. Understood, Your Majesty, but isn't the monthly salary of half a silver coin too high? Grey Worm suggested. Danny didn't say anything after hearing this, and Jack explained aloud, it's not high. If you want them to work hard, you naturally have to pay more money. Half a silver coin is just the basic salary, and it will increase with the years in the future. In fact, even if they don't pay them, as long as they are well fed every day, there will naturally be plenty of people coming. But not all armies can maintain their combat effectiveness even without money like the Unsullied. Jack referred to the Kin's military merit system. As long as you kill the enemy, you can get promoted and get rich, and there will be extra military pay. This can greatly improve the training enthusiasm and combat effectiveness of the army. Seeing this, Grey Worm didn't say anything more. After all, Jack had obviously discussed this matter with Her Majesty the Queen. Then there was the matter of work for relief, which required Jack to be personally responsible for. After all, the Prime Minister did this kind of thing. In addition, regarding the management of Meereen, I have a plan, which is to divide Meereen into 13 special districts for management. Then Danny told the location of the 13 special districts, which were roughly divided into the upper 6 districts and the lower 5 districts. Then Jack took out a piece of parchment and began to read out the list of governors of the 13 special districts. Danny and Jack served as governors of the 2 most central areas, namely the 1st district and the 2nd district. The remaining 11 districts were, as expected, divided into 11 nobles, and Mando served as the administrator of the 3rd district. Then Danny told some messy things, and the first court meeting was over. Danny did not announce who would take up the positions of Minister of Finance and Minister of Intelligence until the end, and it was obvious that she was going to take charge of them herself. Only the position of Minister of the Navy was given to Jack to hold concurrently. After everyone left, Mando immediately took his son Ivan to find Jack. Prime Minister Poseidon, wait a moment. Jack stopped, and Mando hurriedly walked up. Prime Minister Poseidon, this is my son, Ivan Grew. I will trouble you in the future. Mando was always thinking about making his son Jack's attendant. This would not only consolidate the relationship with Jack, but also make his son a hostage, so that Jack would feel at ease with him. What's more, Mando really believed that Ivan could learn something from Jack. Chapter 54 Executive Officers Meeting. Jack looked Ivan Grew up and down. This guy was not as bad as Mando said. On the contrary, Ivan looked like a very smart young man. Hello, Prime Minister. I have heard of your name for a long time. The reputation of the Dragon Father is well known. I'm so excited to meet you in person today. Although Ivan was flattering, his excitement was not fake. Before, his father was very sure that Jack was a person who would do things if he received benefits, but he did not believe it. He thought that all dignitaries were selfish and misers, but he did not expect that Jack would directly push his father to the position of Deputy Prime Minister. This made Ivan very excited. After all, as the son of the Prime Minister, his status would definitely rise. And his father also fought for him to become Jack's attendant. He finally had a ticket to become a player in the center of power. Ivan, you look good. Follow me in the future. Give you the first task, notify all administrative officials who have not yet taken office to meet at the Prime Minister's pyramid. Okay, I'll go now. Ivan left quickly. Then Jack said to Mando, let's go, Lord Mando, let's go to the Prime Minister's pyramid first. Lord Mando, what do you think of the current situation? Jack asked as they walked. Mando knew that Jack was testing him, so he immediately said, "We haven't gained a firm foothold yet. There is a kind of assassin in Meereen, called the Sons of the Harpy. Although this kind of assassin does not have a strong assassination method, they are not afraid of life and death. They usually hide among the people or even the former slaves, and their number is unknown. What I'm most worried about now is them. They are like poisonous snakes in the shadows. Once we show signs of fatigue, they will stick their heads out and bite us hard." Hearing Mando's words, Jack's trust in Mando increased a lot. Being able to take the initiative to talk about the situation of the Sons of the Harpy means that he has been thinking about the problem on Dana's side. And the Sons of the Harpy have indeed become the biggest problem in Meereen. Even when the slave owners returned to attack Astapor again, Dany had no chance to sneak attack the slave owners coalition. Because as soon as Dany takes the Unsullied away, the slave owners in the city will take control of Meereen again. Yes, the Sons of the Harpy are indeed a big threat. You will be the administrator in the future. Is there any way to eliminate the Sons of the Harpy in your jurisdiction? Mando remained calm on the surface, but he was very surprised in his heart. Jack seemed to have known about the existence of the Sons of the Harpy for a long time. After calming down, Mando said, "The Sons of the Harpy cannot be eradicated for the time being. We can only wait for them to show up, follow the clues, and completely eradicate them." However, although Mando said to eradicate them, he actually did not have much hope in his heart. He knew how difficult the Sons of the Harpy were, but it was not easy to say it now. Jack did not care about Mando's answer. He did not expect Mando to come up with any effective suggestions. The Sons of the Harpy are actually the death squads raised by the nobles of Meereen, and then some free people who hate Dany very much. Jack has already thought of a simple way to deal with the Sons of the Harpy. Although it may not be possible to completely eradicate the Sons of the Harpy, it must have a suppressive effect. The two walked and talked, and soon arrived at the Prime Minister's pyramid. The Prime Minister's pyramid is a small pyramid next to Dany's Great Pyramid. At Jack's suggestion, Dany renamed the Great Pyramid the True Dragon Pyramid, and set this small pyramid as the Prime Minister's Tower. In the future, the Prime Minister's Tower, renamed from this small pyramid, will be Jack's residence and office. As for the Deputy Prime Minister, Jack can only say that he is not qualified yet. In the future, all the regular officials in the Round Table will have a small pyramid as their residence. Only in this way can the difference between the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, as well as the gap in status and power, be reflected. Jack led Mando into the Prime Minister's pyramid. The upper floor here has not been cleaned up yet, only the first floor has been cleaned up. The first floor is also where Jack will work in the future. It is worth mentioning that the pyramid is not as dark and damp as Jack remembered. On the contrary, as the residence of the top dignitaries in Meereen, the pyramid is warm in winter and cool in summer, with good light transmittance and ventilation. Moreover, there is artificial glass in the world of Game of Thrones, so the interior of the pyramid will not appear dim. After waiting for a while, the other 10 people also arrived one after another. Please take a seat, everyone. From the moment Her Majesty the Queen appoints you, you are the administrators of your respective special districts. There are some things I need to tell you. Jack thought that some things must be explained, otherwise it is likely to cause trouble later. The first is the management problem. I don't want to hear rumors that you oppress free people or newly free people in the future. Second, you should have enough literate people to assist you in management. So the collection of taxes is handed over to you, and then you submit it to Her Majesty. I don't mind you embezzling, but don't let me catch you, otherwise the position of administrator will be handed over to someone else. Jack simply gave a warning to prevent this group of people from causing public resentment. Third, you will compile a set of laws for me next, and give it to me within 3 days. This set of laws is for everyone, regardless of nobles or commoners. Do you understand what I mean? Everyone nodded. Jack wanted a set of laws to manage Meereen, and this set of laws must be absolutely fair. This task is very simple, just modify it according to the previous slave owner code. Finally, you go to your respective administrative districts to count the population, including all people, including nobles and freemen. Make sure to count them clearly. Then form a community with 10 neighboring households. No one, including nobles, is allowed to move, and no gathering of more than 20 people is allowed. In the community, if one family commits a crime, the other 9 families will be treated as guilty. Of course, if you take the initiative to expose the crime, you will not be punished, and you will be rewarded. Also, let your people inform that there are a large number of reactionaries in Meereen, including spies, assassins, sons of the Harpy, etc. Anyone who reports and verifies that it is true will be rewarded with 50 gold dragons, and His Majesty will personally distribute the money. This is Jack's first method to deal with the Sons of the Harpy, the system of collective responsibility. Since the Sons of the Harpy are hiding among everyone, Jack will let everyone monitor the Sons of the Harpy at all times. And there is another benefit to doing this, which is to fully control the labor force of Meereen, and keep everyone under the surveillance of the government at all times. At the same time, the benefits of Jack's winning over these nobles are also reflected. These nobles will provide enough literate talents to help do things. For example, how many of Dana's men can count the population? Although the Unsullied are very powerful, how many of them can read? And there is another hidden benefit, that is, this group of nobles will also win over other nobles to become their allies. They will also be afraid of being isolated by all the nobles, and will unconsciously win over the nobles they are familiar with. These nobles who are won over will become Dana's potential allies. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. What kind of person is the most terrifying? The next morning, the news of Meereen's division into 13 special districts spread. What shocked the Meereenese was that the governors of the 13 administrative districts were all local nobles. This move made many small nobles who had a good relationship with these 13 nobles active. The big nobles were divided into 3 factions. Some nobles still insisted on expelling Daenerys, while a small number of them were watching and did not express their opinions. Finally, several nobles welcomed Daenerys' rule because their family economy did not rely on the slave trade, but on olive oil and wine. If Dany could really gain a foothold in Meereen, they would squeeze all the nobles who made their fortunes by selling slaves to death. They were even considering shaving their heads to show their loyalty, but Dany had not yet shown the strength to gain a foothold. In the mansion rented by Jack, the little girl swallowed the milk in big mouthfuls. Wiping her mouth, Vitelli complained, "Really, it's been so long, you'll tire me to death." "It's not me who asked you to drink milk," Jack said helplessly. "Hate, hate, hate." Vidlia put on her clothes angrily. Then she went to fetch water for Jack to wash up. With Vidlia's help, Jack quickly finished dressing. "I'm talking to you. Why don't you like to wear silk clothes? Linen clothes are so uncomfortable. By the way, have you grown up again?" Vidlia said as a matter of course. "You have to hold it to sleep every night, for sure." Jack was a little embarrassed. He had developed a habit of hugging the quilt to sleep at night. Now that he had the conditions, he naturally had to hug something softer than the quilt to sleep. Ellie and Yeager were not around, so Vidlia had to take over first. Although it was still a little small, the experience was not bad. In order to ease the embarrassment, Jack said, "Let's go to court first. I guess Her Majesty the Queen is waiting anxiously." Vidlia pouted. She was very dull, but it didn't mean she was stupid. She just reacted a little slowly. This obvious change of subject could be heard by anyone. But she didn't continue to ask. It would be bad to embarrass brother Jack. Thinking of this, Vitaly happily jumped and followed Jack to the True Dragon Pyramid. Along the way, the two bought breakfast, and it took a long time to reach the Golden Dragon Tower. At this time, everyone in the Pyramid Hall had been waiting for a long time. The 163 evil nobles counted had been selected today. So Dany was going to discuss their treatment today, whether to confiscate their property as Jack said, or to mail them directly. In addition, Dany also wanted to select some illiterate people from the slaves to serve as the management of Meereen and stuff them under the nobles from districts 3 to 13 to let them check and balance each other. However, when everyone saw Jack, their eyes twitched. I saw Jack swallowing a mutton pie in big mouthfuls. Speaking of the staple food of Meereen, it must be mutton and wheat. Even the price of mutton in Meereen is almost the same as that of pork. You know, pork is something that only poor people eat. Mutton is cheap because there are many herdsmen who graze it, and many people are not used to the smell of mutton. The nobles eat beef and the like. Pork is cheap because it has a strong fishy smell. If piglets are not castrated when they are young, they will have a strong fishy smell when they grow up. Many people would rather eat pig offal than pork. I didn't expect that the Prime Minister would be so happy, even if he ate mutton. He is so simple. If those vicious slave owners had 100 times as much as you, the lives of slaves would not be so miserable. Needless to say, this flattery was definitely from Mando. Only Mando was so thick-skinned that he would firmly say that he was a member of Jack's party. Daenerys glanced at Mando without leaving a trace, and then said, "Then let's wait until the Prime Minister finishes his meal before the court meeting." At this moment, Jack's power was fully revealed, and it even made people wonder who was the ruler of Meereen. But Jack didn't play big cards. Dany gave him face, and he also had to give Dany face. Face is mutual. After swallowing the mutton pie in 2 or 3 bites, Jack said apologetically, Sorry, I slept too late last night, got up in a hurry this morning, and haven't eaten yet. The Prime Minister has worked day and night for Meereen. It's really hard. I will hold a banquet another day. Please relax." Jorah and Barristan and other original team members looked at Mando, who was flattering him. Everyone couldn't help but despise him in their hearts. He really didn't care about his face for power. After all, he is also a deputy prime minister. He doesn't think about how to divide power from Jack, but flatters him everywhere. Little do they know that such people are the most terrible. Once Jack shows a trend of falling out of favor, such people will definitely seize the opportunity to bite back. After hearing what Jack said, Dany's face was a little hot. This guy came to her at midnight yesterday. I found a very good novel. I'm addicted. I'll update these. I can't control myself. I'm going to read the novel. Don't worry, I can finish it today and update it as usual tomorrow. Chapter 56 Population Transfer. Dany suppressed her thoughts, and after the blush on her face subsided, she spoke. What do you think about the execution method of these 163 slave owners? Your Majesty, I think Prime Minister Jack's suggestion is very appropriate. It will not offend the slave owners to death, and at the same time it has enough starting force, and it can also collect a large amount of money, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Barristan persuaded Dany to adopt Jack's method. Although Barristan had never managed a country, he had seen pigs run, even if he had not eaten pork, when he was in the royal court meeting. To put it bluntly, this group of slave owners is no different from the nobles in Westeros. If the monarch wants to maintain his rule, he cannot rely solely on military force. Political means, such as winning their support, are also particularly important. If Dany really gets angry and kills everyone, then let alone winning them over, if she does not rebel immediately, even the Unsullied will be amazing. Dany pursed her lips, but the new free people are very vocal. If we don't kill them, I'm afraid. Jack raised his eyebrows. Your Majesty, forgive me for being blunt. The new free people call you mother, so they are your children. I can love my children, but I can't spoil them. You can't do whatever they want. They are the people and you are the king. Everything must be based on your will. If you can make their lives better, it will be their blessing. If it really doesn't work, give some of the confiscated wealth to these new free people. Dany thought for a moment, and finally felt that what Jack said made sense. Although he wanted to nail the slave owners to death, and then seize their property. But what Barristan said made sense, and the method Jack gave was also reasonable. There was no reason to act on his own. Okay, then do as Prime Minister Jack said, and distribute a portion of the confiscated wealth to the new freedmen. In addition, select some of the freedmen to serve as low-level officials in the 13 administrative districts. Does it make sense for you? If you have any different opinions, you can put them forward. It doesn't make sense for us. It's all up to the Queen. Mando said directly. Their position as administrators has not been completely established, and they have almost no say now. Later, Dany said some dispensable things. Obviously, she knew nothing about how to be a good queen. But she is learning slowly. The first step is to be good at accepting the opinions of her ministers. This even made Jack feel that he was the kind of powerful minister in the ancient drama who was so bad that he was pus-filled and then waited for the male protagonist to appear and put himself in jail. When the court meeting ended, the True Dragon Pyramid announced 163 slave owners with heinous crimes. According to Jack's request, a large number of literate people were sent to read out the crimes of these slave owners in the 13 administrative districts. Then the Unsullied quickly went out to capture these slave owners. After learning that they were on the list, these slave owners all cursed. But these were futile efforts, and they were still taken to the square for trial. Because they didn't know whether they would be executed or their property would be confiscated as Jack had said before, the slave owners began to panic the moment they arrived at the square. Then Mancho came in front of everyone and began to read out their crimes. In order to reflect the authenticity, Mancho also listed the crimes committed by each of them and the punishment they should receive. According to the True Dragon Code, you all have to be beheaded, but Her Majesty the Queen is kind-hearted, so you will be given a chance to live and only confiscate 70% of your property as a punishment. Then Mancho asked loudly if there were still people who were dissatisfied and they could boldly put forward their own ideas. However, everyone was silent and obviously had acquiesced to this method of handling. Jack looked at this scene and shook his head in disappointment. It's a pity that no one came out to jump around and didn't even give a chance to search the house. Afterwards, Jack personally led people to inspect the property of these slave owners to prevent them from hiding their property and getting away with it. Jack was busy until the evening. A total of 3 million gold dragons were confiscated this time, but unfortunately there were not many real nobles among these slave owners. Most of them were slave traders. This also indirectly reflects the terrifying deterrent power of the Great Lords in Meereen. Even though Jack promised to vote anonymously, the free people were still worried about being exposed, which would cause the revenge of the Great Lords. Jack flipped through the roster in his hand with some disappointment. It recorded in detail who reported which Great Lord, slave owner, or noble. Originally, it was intended to use these to threaten some people to surrender, but it did not play the role that Jack imagined. Oh, it's annoying. There are so many things. Complained. Jack was going to find Danny to vent his dissatisfaction. She was busy all day, but she was free. The next morning, Mando went to the Prime Minister's tower. At this time, Jack was sleeping. There was no court meeting today, so he could sleep in a little. Unfortunately, when he was halfway through his lazy sleep, he was woken up by Vitelli, saying that Deputy Prime Minister Mando wanted to see him. Jack had no choice but to get up, put on his clothes, washed up, and then met Mando. Lord Jack, the 1.8 million gold dragons collected this time have all been put into the treasury. According to your instructions, 180,000 gold dragons will be divided into silver coins and distributed to the free people. Yes. Jack nodded and then said, I will pay another 100,000 gold dragons myself and say that it is an extra subsidy from Her Majesty the Queen. Remember, it is necessary to explain the source of the money clearly. In addition, the Meereenese also have it, so just say that Her Majesty the Queen said that from now on there will be no distinction between new and old free people, only Meereen citizens. Jack generously took out 100,000 gold dragons to help Daenerys win the hearts of the people. Of course, these 100,000 gold dragons were not paid by Jack himself, but it can also be said that it was Jack's own money. After all, after Jack embezzled the money, it was Jack's own money. 3 million gold royals were confiscated. Jack took 1 million himself, and the administrative officers who were responsible for assisting in the inventory of property took 200,000. Among them, Mancho took as much as 70,000, which shows how wise it was for him to spend all his money to give Jack gifts. In short, the confiscation operation made the bureaucratic group headed by Jack very rich. That's right. As if he had thought of something, Mancho quickly took out a list. Master Jack, this is the information of the Lazar people you want. Jack was stunned when he heard it. You are so efficient at work. Mancho waved his hand quickly. It will take 2 days to count the total population. Isn't it because you are anxious to get the information of the Lazar people? So we counted the number and information of the Lazar people first. But don't worry, the work has not been delayed. We have a backup of the information of the laser people, so we can continue to count without any delay. I found a very good novel. I'm addicted, so I will update these. I can't control myself. I want to read the novel. Don't worry, I can finish it today and update as usual tomorrow. Chapter 57, Casting and Welding Fungi. Jack was very surprised. Manda was really good at doing things. Being a deputy prime minister was not a waste of talent. In the original novel, Danny did not employ the local nobles of Meereen at the beginning, but let Dario be responsible for collecting taxes. Because only Dario could read and write, and Dario would only embezzle half of the taxes, which was the least of all. But now the plot has changed a lot, and Dario has not been reused by Daenerys. Even in Daenerys' eyes, he is just the leader of a small mercenary group, and he surrendered. Taking the information from Manda, Jack roughly flipped through it and found that the number of laser people was so large. A full 200,000 laser people are estimated to account for 1/5 of the total population and 1/3 of the slave population. Jack could only sigh that they are worthy of being sheep people. It can be seen how much the centaurs love the sheep people. Not only the centaurs, but also many slave traders will go to plunder the sheep villages. Sort out the people over 18 and under 30 and hand them over to me. After Jack handed the documents in his hand to Ewan, he continued to discuss the canal drainage with Mando. Because the financial power of Meereen is controlled by Danny, they need to estimate the expected cost first, and then submit it to Danny to apply for funds. Now the population of Meereen is about 850,000, and slaves are coming from other places one after another, and the population is still increasing. Among them, free people and nobles occupy 250,000, and the original slaves occupy 600,000. Among these 600,000 people, Jack is going to take 100,000, and there are still 500,000. Therefore, the survival of these 500,000 people has become a huge problem, but not all of the 500,000 people are idle. Some people also choose to work at the docks or other places. Now they are not slaves, and they are paid for working. In the end, Jack decided to recruit 200,000 people to dig the canal. As the saying goes, salt comes with water and goes with water. After the canal is dug, it won't take long for the land around Meereen to slowly recover. What about this treatment? Mancho asked. After all, they were no longer slaves. They couldn't be driven to work by whips like before, could they? 3 meals of wild vegetable porridge a day. For lunch, we'll kill a few pigs and make sure there's meat in the wild vegetable porridge. In addition, we'll pay 5 copper coins. The money wasn't much. 5 copper coins were only enough to buy a pork sausage. But the most important thing was that they would be full 3 times a day. This was the most attractive part. Mancho looked embarrassed. This might not be easy to apply for. If a laborer wanted to eat enough, he would need at least 2 kilograms of food a day. 200,000 people would need 400,000 kilograms of food a day, which was as much as the consumption of war. And they had to pay 1 million copper coins a day. The monthly consumption was an astronomical figure. Jack saw Mancho looking embarrassed and knew what he was worried about. I know you are worried about the high cost, but now we have sent envoys to the Laser Plains for negotiation. I believe that a steady supply of food will be delivered soon. Besides, money is not a problem. Gold dragons are only gold dragons if they are spent. If they are kept in the warehouse without being spent, they are no different from stones. Danny has sent envoys to the Laser Plains for negotiation. At the same time, at Jack's suggestion, she also directly asked Dario to lead the Second Sons and 2,000 Unsullied to follow. In fact, these 2,000 Unsullied not only play the role of protecting the Laser people, but also can be used to monitor the Laser people. Once the Laser people want to use food to kill Cameron, the Unsullied can chop off the Laser people's hands. To put it bluntly, it is the Laser army, which is the same as the casting and welding mold. While preventing centaurs, it can also control the Laser people. I believe that the servile welding, no, the Laser people will definitely agree with Meereen's approach. In fact, it cannot be said that the Laser people are servile. They live in the Laser Plains and are good at grazing and farming. They just want to farm and graze well. They have no idea of invading others and love peace. but the kind-hearted character of the race made them nicknamed Hesselach by the Dothraki, which means sheep people. And most of the Lazar people live in the form of villages, and only a very small number of tribes can build a small town. There is not even a city wall, and they live in the slave continent of Essos. They are simply the perfect slave race. Okay, in this case, I will take out a rough memorial and hand it in. I hope Her Majesty will agree. Patting Mando on the shoulder, Jack smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will go to Her Majesty tonight and I will definitely get her to agree." Well, Mando knew that Jack and Daenerys had a bad relationship. After all, Jack is handsome, his age is not much different from the Queen, he is extremely talented, and he is also the father of dragons. No matter how you look at it, he is a perfect match for Dany. What's more, Jack also has the blood of Targaryen. According to the nature of Targaryen, it is very normal for close relatives to marry. After saying goodbye to Jack, Mando immediately arranged the recruitment of labor. These things were delegated to him by Jack, and he was very active. But in fact, it was not what he thought. Jack valued him. It was just that Jack was lazy, so he shared a lot of government affairs. At the same time, Jorah also took some unsullied officers and recruited new soldiers with Grey Worm. All citizens who joined the army received 1 silver coin a month, including food and accommodation. After half a year, the salary increased to 30 silver coins. As for why it would increase so much after half a year, it was mainly because of the threat from other trading city-states. In less than half a year, the anti-Dragon Mother Coalition would be established, and then it would be a siege of almost half of Essos. There would definitely be a war at that time, and people would die in the war. If they didn't give more, what would happen if these slave-born recruits ran away? Soon Jorah's side was surrounded by people, noisily asking Jorah if it was true. Even many Myrines were tempted. Although they were higher than slaves, they also had to work to earn money. And as long as they joined the army for half a year, they could get a monthly salary of 30 silver coins, which was really a lot, and the army also provided food and accommodation. This saved another person's rations. Since Daenerys' reputation was very good in the hearts of these newly liberated slaves, not many people doubted it and signed up to join the army. Seeing the crowd of people who signed up enthusiastically, Jorah was not happy. In his opinion, it would take too much time and money to train these people into soldiers who could fight. In particular, weapons and armor had to be made. If Jack's idea was followed, it would be impossible to arm these people without hundreds of thousands of gold dragons. Jack's idea was very simple, that is, to at least arrange leather armor and proper knives, guns, shields, and bows for these people. Then the leather armor needed was contracted to the blacksmiths and tailors in Meereen, and official blacksmiths and tailors were established. Finally, the official shops took the lead in establishing the Heavy Industry Council and the Light Industry Council. If you want a large number of official orders, you have to join the parliament and accept the plans and rules formulated by the parliament. Chapter 58. Grey Worm, please help maintain order. This time the recruitment was carried out in different areas. After discussing with Barristan and Jorah, Dany decided to recruit a total of 21,000 people and then take them to the Cather Pass for training. The 3,000 people who were eliminated returned to Meereen to take on the patrol and security tasks of Meereen so that the Unsullied could be freed to do more things. And because Manda mentioned the existence of the Sons of the Harpy, Dany also strengthened her defenses. Because the Unsullied's formation advantage could not be brought into play in the alleys, the next 3,000 people would replace the Unsullied to patrol the streets and alleys. Afterwards, the Unsullied maintained order under the command of Grey Worm, and Jorah began the recruitment work in the 1st district. The 13 districts must complete the recruitment task within 3 days, and on the 4th day they must gather and set off to the Cather Pass. There are also some craftsmen accompanying them, who are going to build a military fortress at the Cather Pass. Time waits for no one. They must speed up and strive to have enough strength to protect themselves before the slave owners coalition arrives. At this time, Dany was sighing and groaning in the Dragon Pyramid. Miss Missandei asked worriedly, "Your Majesty, are you feeling unwell?" She had been having so much fun with the Prime Minister last night. Why did she suddenly become so upset today? Alas, I have finally managed to collect money from Astapa, and I have approved 3 million at once. I don't know how much I will spend later. Miss Andy smiled immediately after hearing this, stepped forward to massage Danny's shoulders, and comforted her. We don't have to spend so much money all the time. Once we get through the crisis, Myrene will be able to operate normally. Besides, this money is the savings of slave owners for hundreds of years, not your own hard-earned money. There is no need to be sad. Danny felt much better after hearing this, and comforted herself. That's right. And Jack said, that money is no different from stone, if it is not spent. Only money that flows is money. But then Danny took Miss Andy into her arms. But 3 million, it's really a lot. No, I want Manda to add more fines to the code. Miss Andy felt Anna's moving little hands and her face flushed. She was not a lesbian, but she couldn't refuse Danny. As the number of lesbians with Danny increased, Miss Andy felt that she had become a bit gay. Under Jack's policy, the entire Myrene began to operate in an orderly manner. By digging canals, planting olives, building fortresses, recruiting new soldiers, and building state-owned enterprises, it successfully absorbed about 300,000 laborers. Finally, with some people who were originally skilled slaves and could find jobs for themselves, Myrene's employment problem in the short term was solved. After this period of time, you can try to grow food and cash crops on the land around Myrene. Most of the remaining people are old and young. This group of people can't do manual labor, so they can only live on the relief food issued by Danny. Jack didn't have any good way to deal with this. Myrene's finances are planned, and it is impossible to take out another sum of money to build a nursing home. And if Danny doesn't liberate the slave bay, they will most likely be driven by slave owners until they are exhausted. So they are lucky to still get relief food. A month passed in a blink of an eye. On this day, Jack received a letter of unknown origin. Although the letter did not explain the purpose, the icon in the upper left corner let Jack know that it was a letter from Atlantis. The letter indicated that the caravan was approaching the slave bay and would arrive in about 3 days. All the ships were empty, with a total of 150 ships, which was more than expected. However, these 150 ships could only transport 10,000 people at a time, and they had to carry supplies. The number was not small. First, they would take away the 5,000 high-level slaves they had asked for from Danny, and take away 5,000 female lasers. It would take about 3 months to go back and forth, and half a year to transport 20,000 people. This efficiency was really a bit lame. However, they could rent some ships, but renting ships would expose the Seychelles Islands too early. After thinking it over again and again, Jack gave up the idea of renting ships and thought of another way. Jack could hire some fleets, let the lasers board the ships in Myrene, and then transfer to the ships of the giant sea caravan on the high seas, which would save half the time. However, this time it would not be possible, because the Atlantis fleet had already arrived at the slave bay. Jack immediately got up and went to the True Dragon Pyramid to find Daenerys. Since the Prime Minister's tower was right next to the True Dragon Pyramid, Jack soon arrived at the top of the pyramid. This is where Danny rests. Because of Jack's special status, the guards and maids did not stop him along the way. After all, Danny once ordered Jack not to stop her if he came to see her in the middle of the night. However, when Jack arrived at the door of Dana's room, he heard some bad sounds because of his hearing ability beyond that of ordinary people. Is this Miss Andy? Jack carefully identified and confirmed that it was Danny and Miss Andy. Why are these two guys so lesbian? Regardless of the sweet voices inside, Jack pushed the door and walked in. You two are so good that you don't even put down the bed curtains in broad daylight. Jack's voice and the sound of the door opening scared the two of them. When Annie saw that it was Jack, she immediately relaxed and did not shy away. Miss Andy's face was red with shame. The black-skinned girl's face was no longer black. Miss Andy is not old, even a little younger than Danny. Miss Andy in the original book is not old either. Miss Andy should be 16 years old this year, younger than Daenerys. Miss Andy was in a hurry to get the quilt, but found that it had been thrown on the table by Danny. In the end, she could only hide behind Danny timidly. However, Danny sat on the bed with a big horse and a golden knife. What are you doing here? Jack rolled his eyes. So you mean I can't come if I have nothing to do? Of course you can come if you have nothing to do, but you are a guy who doesn't get up early without profit. Tell me, what do you want from me? The Atlantis fleet is coming soon. I will take away 5,000 high-level slaves in the next 2 days. At that time, we need to announce to the outside world, this is a transaction that the slave owner has already discussed with Atlantis. It is a job, not a slave trade. Daenerys narrowed her eyes and showed a malicious smile. Atlantis is a force under Jack. According to Jack, Atlantis is his fleet at sea and has set up a base camp on the island. But so far, only a few people know that Jack is the leader of Atlantis. Why do you want to hide your identity as the Sea King of Atlantis? Dany asked this question formally for the first time. Although she was curious before, she had never asked it. Jack looked at the sky outside and then said, Miss Andy, don't leave. I will tell you in detail. Chapter 59 Game. After a period of discussion, Jack finally decided to gather the 10,000 people at the dock under the cover of night, and then let the caravan take them away before dawn. To destroy the relationship between Atlantis and Meereen as much as possible. Jack also told Dany the truth about this, because he was afraid of affecting Atlantis' business. After all, although the Seychelles Islands are large enough and rich in resources, the early development still requires a lot of materials and foreign manpower. The most important thing is that the Unsullied cannot give birth, otherwise Jack would not be in a hurry to transfer a large number of people. After Jack left the True Dragon Pyramid, he began to prepare for the population transfer. The population transferred this time included 5,000 senior slaves, including doctors, teachers, housekeepers and a large number of various craftsmen. There is nothing to say about the 5,000 ordinary slaves. The ratio of men to women is 1:4, with more women, and they are all around 20 years old, a perfect population ratio. These 10,000 people are the real first population of Atlantis. Before they arrived, 70% of the population on the Seychelles Islands were rootless Unsullied. The remaining 29% are male crew members, and only a few maids are female. This led to the male crew members scrambling to go out to sea. On the first night, after arriving at the destination, they must visit brothels. The rich ones can only stare blankly with money in the Seychelles. But after arriving at the trading city-state, you only need to spend dozens of copper coins to find a sister with super skills. Even spending a few silver coins, you can play with a high-quality girl. So happy. Time soon came to the third day, and a large fleet docked at the dock of Meereen. Fortunately, Meereen's maritime trade is developed, and there are enough and large docks for the giant wave merchant fleet to dock. After Roger Boone got off the ship with a group of attendants, a young man immediately came up to greet him. You are the head of the Atlantis caravan. Please follow me. I'm the attendant of Lord Jack. Then Ivan took Rutger to the Prime Minister's pyramid. And Rutger looked at the familiar Meereen city, with some bad memories in his eyes. He was originally a ship slave in Meereen. After being bought by Newgate, he discovered some talent for business, and was later promoted by Newgate to the president of the Chamber of Commerce. He also knew that opportunities were not easy to come by. He was learning to read and write every day. He couldn't always let the attendants help him read documents. What if the attendants were bribed by someone? Wouldn't he become a puppet of the attendants? Soon Rutger saw Jack playing the cat claw mouse game. The so-called cat claw mouses that Jack blindfolds himself and calls a group of naked prostitutes around him, and he acts as a cat. Ivan's face changed drastically. He looked at Jack, who was shouting, "Where are you running, my beloved concubine?" and then looked at Rutger, who had no change in expression. At this time, Ivan's heart was half cold. No wonder there was a team of guards outside the door. How could you play this kind of game in the Prime Minister's tower in broad daylight? Well, I'm really sorry, President Rutger. This is a little hobby of our Prime Minister. Please follow me and have some tea first. Ivan looked embarrassed. Rutger's expression remained unchanged, but he was a little curious that Ivan didn't know his identity. Otherwise, Ivan would never show such an expression of exposing the family shame. Instead, both of them waited respectfully for Jack to finish the game. In fact, Jack did not tell Ivan about this matter, but only told Ivan that he would meet a distinguished guest next. What Jack didn't expect was that Ivan was too serious about his work and went to the dock to wait early. Rutger was the same person, much earlier than the scheduled time. He was supposed to arrive at noon. After Ivan settled Rutger, he hurried to the hall. Go, 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 go back quickly. Ivan came up and drove all the prostitutes away. Hearing the voice, Jack took off the blindfold. Hey, that little sister, don't leave first, put on the bra. Then Jack came to Ivan seriously and asked what happened. Usually when he played in this spacious hall, Ivan didn't come out to stop him. Oh, how can you do such a thing in broad daylight? Didn't you say that there would be a distinguished guest today? You kid, you went home to play secretly. Do you think I don't know? Jack scolded with a stern face. What? How do you know? No, it's not important. You should change your clothes quickly. The distinguished guest you are going to receive has arrived and is in the side hall. Huh? Rutger came so early? Rutger Boone, when Newgate recommended him as the president of the Chamber of Commerce, he said a lot of good things. One of them was punctuality. Now it seems that he is not punctual at all. After Jack changed into a formal suit, he summoned Rutger to the hall again. After Ivan brought Rutger into the hall, Jack asked Ivan to leave. At this time, only Rutger and Jack were left in the hall. You must be Rutger, right? I often hear Newgate praise you. Now that I see you, you are indeed a handsome man with bright eyes. Your Majesty, you are too kind. I'm just a small ship slave. Fortunately, I can have what I have today because of your appreciation and that of Prime Minister Newgate. You are indeed good. How is the construction of Atlantis going now? I haven't been back for several months. Tell me about it. Rutger stood up immediately after hearing this and reported, Your Majesty, the construction has just begun. According to your plan, Lord Newgate bought some master craftsmen in the free trade city-state, but due to the lack of manpower, the limestone you mentioned is also difficult to buy, so the progress has been very slow. Jack frowned. He was going to build the entire Sea-King city with cement. Is there no limestone in the sea basins around the Seychelles? The main materials of cement are limestone, clay and sand. As the saying goes, 1 stone, 2 sands and 3 clays. This is the simplest way to make cement. Sand and clay are easy to find, but limestone is not easy to find. The main reason is that the current civilization is not clear about the use of limestone, so many people don't know about it. Your Majesty, there may be limestone on the island, but our development of the archipelago is too shallow, and many places have not been involved. However, I heard from a merchant that this kind of limestone is in Westeros. Westeros? Jack raised his eyebrows. He hasn't paid attention to the situation in Westeros for a long time, but according to the time estimate, the War of the Five Kings has not yet been completed. The current time is not the same as the original timeline. Under the instigation of Jack, the little butterfly, Dina has occupied me much earlier. I wish you all a happy Dragon Boat Festival. Today, I'm going to make rice dumplings for my goddess. To be honest, I'm a licker, but if you don't like it, who wants to be a licker? Sorry everyone. Exclamation mark. Chapter 60 Financial Assistance Program. Jack motioned for Rutger Boone to elaborate. Your Majesty, when I was buying grain in Volantis before, I met a grain merchant from Westeros. According to what he said, Westeros is now in the midst of war. There was only 1 king, but now there are 5. There is a lot of limestone in the Crownland, and it is said that this kind of stone is very common in the River Kingdom, and it can be found everywhere on the roadside mountains. Jack's mind became active after hearing this. Forget about the Riverland, it's too far to make a trip. But the Crownland is possible, but it's definitely not close. Is there no limestone in Essos? There is definitely some in Essos, but I haven't found a seller yet. Rutger said affirmatively. Because he asked the grain merchant in Westeros, this kind of stone is not rare, and can even be found everywhere. But the problem is that Rutger went to several trading city-states and there was no limestone for sale. Then Rutger expressed his doubts, and Jack felt that something was wrong after hearing it. Logically speaking, there is some in Westeros, and there are a lot of them, so there is no reason why Essos can't find a seller. Even in the Seychelles, there is a small amount of limestone. Unfortunately, there is only a little bit, and the cement produced is not enough to build a brick kiln. Rutger suddenly had an idea. Your Majesty, do you think there is a possibility that we can't find a seller of limestone, because this thing is everywhere, so no one sells it? Jack was stunned. I copied it. Jack suddenly reacted. Because no one knows how to make cement, limestone is just like ordinary stone in everyone's eyes, and naturally no one specializes in selling stones. If they sell, they will sell good stones, not weird shaped limestone. Jack has always thought that limestone is the main material for making cement, and Jack has never really made cement, so he subconsciously thinks that this thing should be sold like other minerals. Damn it, wine and sex have misled me. I will quit drinking today, Jack said angrily. Thinking that there are a lot of mountains around Myrene, I think there will be a lot of limestone fans, so people should pay attention. At this time, 50,000 people have gathered at the foot of Castle Pass, 20,000 of whom are joining the army, and the remaining 30,000 are building military fortresses. At that time, 10,000 people will be left to mine limestone. It just so happens that the estuary of the Skahazaban River is in Myrene, so even land transportation is saved. And there is no need to buy it. Just hire Myrene's laborers at a low price to mine it. By the way, Roger, in your name, open some taverns, inns and hot pot restaurants in Myrene. After speaking, Jack handed him a booklet. Roger picked up the booklet and saw that it said Myrene Economic Support Plan. Its content includes a large number of business projects, such as the salt land that Castle Myrene is managing, the construction of new taverns, inns, hot pot restaurants, barbecue restaurants, etc. There are also bunny girl waiters, etc., which detail Jack's recent ideas for making money. For example, hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants. The rich variety of spices in the Game of Thrones world is enough to support the business of hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants. Even after the shops in Myrene become popular, they can also drive spice merchants to do business. If you come to do business, you have to stay in a hotel. At that time, the hotel opened by Atlantis will be able to make a lot of money from these merchants. Not only can it boost Myrene's economy, but it can also control Myrene's economy. Jack was recalling the structure of the loom, and he had almost perfected the blueprint. At that time, the cheap cloth of Atlantis could easily squeeze out the cloth merchants of Essos. Even if they have free slaves working, the raw materials still cost money, and how can the efficiency of the loom be compared with that of slaves? The more Roger looked at it, the more surprised he was. He must not be a fool to be the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Your Majesty, if we follow this plan, let alone Myrene, the whole world will be our target for harvest. This is called a technological barrier. If we strangle other forces, we will be able to reap the profits. But the patents mentioned here may not be very realistic. Once we make money, there will definitely be imitations. It is impossible for them to give up imitation just because of a patent and be harvested by us for nothing. Patting Roger on the shoulder, Jack said meaningfully, it's time to show our fists. Suppose we opened a hot pot restaurant in Myrene and then announced that our hot pot restaurant has been patented and no one can imitate it. If you want to open a store, you can only join us. What do you think they will do? Roger said without hesitation. Of course they will change the name and continue to open it. So, as long as he dares to open a store, I can seal up his store as Prime Minister and then confiscate his renovated house and auction it to our allies who join us. In this way, we not only make money from the auction, but also have allies join us. It's killing two birds with one stone. Roger's eyes lit up. In this way, it would really be a profitable business. Okay, Your Majesty, I will go back and look through the content of the hot pot chapter carefully. I will leave you a few stewards at that time, and they will assist you in opening the chain store. Roger certainly cannot stay to be responsible for these things. The material operation of the entire Atlantis depends on him and Newgate. However, there are many stewards among this batch of senior slaves. After they go online, they can share the management pressure of Newgate. It can only be said that this group of stewards are lucky and can directly become the management of Atlantis. And other senior slaves, except for senior bed slaves, will inevitably be the elite of society. And bed slave Jack also has plans. Atlantis cannot always hide in the dark, and sooner or later it will appear in the public eye. It is also good to arrange these bed slaves on the outermost island of the Seychelles Islands and build an entertainment city there. Of course, Jack will not force those who don't want to continue to be bed slaves. The most abundant thing in the game of rights is prostitutes. By then, the prostitutes in the entertainment city will be trained a little bit and put on some special clothes. They will not be lowly prostitutes, but noble ladies. The price for one night will at least double. By the way, how is Karaku? Jack suddenly remembered something. Rutger was stunned when he heard it. He thought that His Majesty had forgotten Karaku. Your Majesty, Karaku is no longer causing trouble. On the contrary, because of constant hunting, there are no wild animals around the camp. More than a month ago, Karaku returned to the Seychelles with Jack's letter. As a result, Karaku was nowhere to be seen after a week, which was obviously a few days' journey. He knew that Karaku was most likely not to come back. Jack did not suspect that Karaku had any accidents. Now Karaku has a wingspan of more than 2 meters. Unless he is killed on the spot by a crossbow when flying at low altitude, he will not encounter any fatal danger. Chapter 61. Everything remains the same. After leaving the Great Pyramid, Rutger returned to the ship. 2 stewards followed him this time. The stewards of the caravan were all promoted by Rutger, and they were quite smart. After all, everyone was born a slave, so it was good enough that they were a little smart. Rutger did not expect all his men to be geniuses. Dono, Marty, you will stay in Meereen to assist His Majesty, but remember not to reveal His Majesty's identity. Then Rutger told a lot of precautions, including opening hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants, and contracting Saltland. Dono and Marty listened very seriously, and confirmed some key details repeatedly. This scene fell into Rutger's eyes, making him very satisfied. However, after Rutger left, Dono and Marty looked at each other, and then couldn't help laughing. Great, I didn't expect that we can stay in Meereen permanently, ha ha ha. Marty was also very happy. Not only can we stay in Meereen permanently, but we can also work with the captain. I said that asking the 7 gods would be useful. Bullshit, I've said that only the people in Westeros believe in the 7 gods. They are fake gods, fake. Dono said. No, Dono, what do you mean, looking for trouble? Haha, go to the tavern, whoever falls first will treat the woman. When the 2 were slaves, they served the slave owner together. Later, the slave owner was happy and rewarded them with a glass of wine each. Since then, the 2 have been addicted to wine. Later, because they looked smart, they were bought back by Rutger and promoted to stewards in a few months. So after the 2 became stewards, they went to drink as soon as they got their salary. Wine is a thing for people. Some people like to drink high-proof wine, while others like to drink low-proof wine. The 2 of them are addicted to high-proof wine, and often they pool their money to buy good wine. Night. At this time, the dock had been taken over by the Unsullied, and a large number of senior slaves were driven to the dock. In the second half of the night, there was also a group of lessers. This group of senior slaves came to the dock with curses. Although they were not interested in Daenerys' liberation of slaves, they were still driven and sold like slaves after they had liberated the slaves. However, they only dared to mix in the crowd and take advantage of the chaos to force and complain. After all, the Unsullied around them did not seem to be joking. Jack was not far away watching this group of senior slaves board the ship in an orderly manner. With this group of senior slaves, the development of Atlantis will be accelerated. As for whether this group of people are willing or not, Jack does not care. Moreover, Jack believes that, as long as this group of people have houses and jobs in the Seychelles, and even have families, they will no longer think about leaving the Seychelles. What's more, the house is not free, there is a mortgage. Even for these future elites, it is not so easy to pay off the mortgage. The house is purchased voluntarily, and it doesn't matter if you don't buy it, but there are wild beasts on the island, and if you don't have a house, you can only sleep in the wind and rain. Thinking of this, Jack laughed out loud unconsciously. Jack is very experienced in how to tie people up. At midnight, about 11 o'clock in the morning, 5,000 senior slaves, no, it should be said, that social elites embarked on a journey to the Seychelles Islands. Among them, a few dozen people protested and even wanted to resist violently, but they were all ordered to be executed on the spot by Jack. Freedom is the slogan shouted by Daenerys, which doesn't work here. If you don't want to go, then go and die. These 5,000 senior slaves account for 80% of the number of senior slaves in Meereen. Although every senior slave is valuable, disobedient senior slaves are worthless. so Jack didn't hesitate to kill. If you try to negotiate with Jack based on your own value, then ordinary people are really not qualified, and the same goes for senior slaves. After the fully loaded ships left, another wave of empty ships came. The number of ships in this wave was small, but it also carried 5,000 people. Soon 5,000 Lazar people were brought to the dock. They were very quiet, but they looked around nervously. The 5,000 selected Lazars thought they would be sold as slaves again. But the leader told them, "You are a very lucky group of people, and you will go to a sacred island, which is said to be the center of the world." This made them nervous and afraid, but also a little expectant. Although it is not bad in Mirin now, with food and copper coins every day, it must be better to be called the center of the world. The Lazars were full of expectations. They would go to the center of the world, where there would be no suffering and no centaurs. There would be endless white bread and fresh milk. Well, anyway, the leader told them so. A perfect world. Anyway, the big cake drawn by Jack still aroused the appetite of the Lazars, making them think more about their future life. Of course, the more important reason is that they know they have no right to refuse. After all 5,000 people were on board, Jack left with satisfaction. The development of Atlantis is finally on the right track, and in another 3 months, the merchant ships sent to Bravos will be transformed and completed, and then they will have real naval power. The most important thing is that after the transformation of these ships is completed, Jack can go back to his old business and make money in coastal areas and high seas. There is still a big gap between professional warships and merchant ships. The time came to the next morning. Everything in Mirin was the same as before. The free people began to work. The conservative nobles hid in the pyramids to plot evil plans. The newly appointed administrators began to place their own people in the administrative districts. Everything was the same as before, and no one noticed that Mirin was missing 10,000 people. Those who knew kept silent. After all, this matter was, to a certain extent, human smuggling. Danny used these people in exchange for Jack's position as Prime Minister. Danny did not regret this, and Jack was very satisfied with the deal. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Fanatics. 2 months later, on the outskirts of the Seychelles, the speed of the fleet was greatly reduced under full load, but fortunately, they sailed with the wind most of the time, so they could return to the Seychelles within 2 months. Many people were on the deck to get some fresh air, because the air in the cabin was too disgusting. They would rather huddle together on the deck than go back to the cabin to suffer, because they had never suffered such suffering when they were high-level slaves before. In contrast, the Lazar people on the other side were more adapted to this kind of cabin life, which was no different from their original living environment. Even with the management of the guards, at least there was no more urination and defecation everywhere. Many people also came to the deck and looked at the Seychelles in the distance. The area of the Seychelles is very large, with the central island alone covering 20,000 square kilometers, and including several small islands around it. The total area can reach 24,000 square kilometers. It is 1/10 of the Blue Star Empire. The territory of the British Empire is about 245,000 square kilometers. Are we going to live on this island in the future? This looks like another cage. A female Lazar person asked the man next to her. The man nodded, and then joked, "Maybe there are a lot of gold mines on it, and we were sold as slaves by Her Majesty the Queen again." The female Lazar rolled her eyes. "Your brain is even dumber than those noble lord's sons. If they were really mining, there wouldn't be so many women." The female Lazar was named Ashley. She was very smart, and had guessed the approximate result of this migration. The seemingly desolate island, 4,000 women, and 1,000 men, all young people. This almost told her that they were the first population to open up the wasteland. Thinking that she would become a reproductive tool after being sent to the island, Ashley couldn't help but frown. She had just gained her freedom and was an apprentice in a tailor shop, learning how to sew clothes. Everything was obviously developing in a good direction, but overnight she fell into a life no different from slaves. The saddest thing is that they didn't even have room for resistance. The Unsullied who escorted them on the ship were Daenerys' people. In other words, this human smuggling was allowed by the Queen. Ashley, why are you so sad? We are about to reach the center of the world. Aren't you curious? The speaker was a 19-year-old male laser named Mark. Ashley rolled her eyes at him. Do you really believe what they say? What center of the world? If it is true, why haven't you heard of it before? Mark picked his nose and then said firmly, it's impossible. Your Majesty will not lie to us. Her Majesty the Queen gives us food and freedom and will not sell us to mine. Of course, it is not mining, but land reclamation similar to mining. Your Majesty does not know how to govern the country and does not understand politics. After Meereen lost its economic source, it must be the Prime Minister who secretly smuggled slaves. Ashley speculated. It must be Her Majesty who liberated you. Besides, the Prime Minister would not do such a thing. I believe the Prime Minister is an upright person. As soon as Mark finished speaking, a dull dragon roar sounded, and a red dragon with a wingspan of nearly 3 meters passed overhead. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the dragon of Prime Minister Jack Poseidon. Take a look. Ashley looked at Mark, thinking, what else do you have to say? However, what Ashley never expected was that Mark was looking at the direction where the dragon flew away with an excited look on his face. He murmured to himself, it's the Prime Minister's dragon. It's Karakshu, the Prime Minister's dragon. Then he looked at Ashley excitedly. It's the Prime Minister's dragon. This must be the center of the world. The Prime Minister will never lie to us. Our good days are coming. Ashley looked at Mark with an excited face and didn't know what to say. She didn't know if it was her illusion. She saw a trace of morbid worship on Mark's face. It was like a fanatic who had gone astray. But what Ashley didn't know was that Mark was one of the first slaves that Jack personally liberated that year. He was also the young slave who was ready to rise up and resist before Jack and Grey Worm arrived. Since then, he has become Jack's fanatic, and he firmly believes that Jack will fulfill his promise as long as it is promised. What a fool. Ashley complained helplessly. You don't believe it? Then let's make a bet. Let's bet on whether our lives will be better than in Meereen after we get to the island. How about it? Ashley sneered and said, okay, what do you want to bet on? How good can the living environment on an island be? Not to mention that it is an undeveloped island. But Mark is indeed confident. If the life on the island is not as good as Meereen, then even if you win, I will do whatever you ask me to do. But if the life on the island is better than Meereen, you have to marry me and give me a litter of boys. Ashley blushed and scolded. I'm not a pig. How can I give you a litter? Seeing this, Mark smiled and said, then give me 10. 10 is 10. I don't believe I will lose. Ashley went all out. Isn't it just 10 children? At most, 1 a year. 10 years will be enough. And Mark laughed. Ashley was very smart and not ugly. She was the object of secret love of many male slaves before. Many people wanted Ashley to give birth to their children, but they didn't expect that they would be the first to do so. Mark couldn't suppress his smile. In his opinion, he would never lose. The Prime Minister said it was the center of the world, so it must be the center of the world. Ashley's face was flushed. Looking at Mark who was grinning, she silently cursed him as a fool. She also had a good impression of Mark, otherwise she would not agree to the request of having a child. After all, it was no different from a marriage proposal. When he was a slave before, Mark was always out of tune with the surrounding environment. He seemed to have never been sad about losing his freedom. He was cheerful, sunny, and energetic every day. Not only Mark and Ashley were guessing about life on the island, but the rest of the laser people were also guessing. But like Ashley, most people still maintained a pessimistic view. When it was dusk, there was only a trace of red glow hanging in the sky, and the fleet finally arrived at the dock of the central island of Seychelles. Today, the central island of Seychelles is called the Seeking Island, a simple and clear name. As it was about to get dark, the guards on the ship almost drove everyone off the ship in the shortest possible time. When she stepped onto the dock, Ashley realized that she had already lost half the battle. The wide and flat dock and the hard road paved with unknown materials under her feet all showed the extraordinariness of the island. Chapter 63 Seeking Island. Soon a large number of Unsullied rushed over. After controlling the situation, an old man came up. Newgate took the iron trumpet handed over by his men, coughed twice, and said, "From today on, you are citizens of Atlantis. In the next period of time, line up to receive supplies, and someone will lead you to the camp." After that, Newgate didn't care about the reaction of this group of people, and directly asked the Unsullied to take 10,000 people to receive supplies first. Since all the resources on the Seeking Island were tilted to the construction of the dock in the early stage, these 10,000 people will have to live in tents for the time being. When everyone learned that they didn't have a place to live, they were immediately disappointed. Without even a place to live, it's worse than life in Meereen. When they thought that they were caught here by deception and threats, everyone felt very uncomfortable, especially the 5,000 senior slaves. Some of them are housekeepers, some are teachers and doctors, and the worst are also senior bed slaves. So no matter which city-state in Essos, they can live comfortably. But in the blink of an eye, they were sent to a deserted island where no one lives. How could they not feel uncomfortable? Fortunately, when it was time to eat, they felt better, because the food here looked very good. Everyone could get a piece of softer bread, as well as vegetable soup and pork sausage. Many people wondered if this was the last meal before execution, and whether they were going to be sent to sacrifice to some evil god. It turned out that they thought too much, and nothing special happened until they finished eating. There were only the Unsullied who kept patrolling, and the caravan crew members who told about the situation on the island. As the crew members explained, the group of people gradually understood their situation. The stupid people thought it was okay. Although they needed to open up the land, they were not afraid of hardship as they were slaves before. And from what they said, after the huge royal city was built, they would also be allocated their own houses. On the other side, Newgate also sorted out the information of this group of people. There were 2,000 craftsmen of various types, 1,000 male and female bed slaves, 600 housekeepers, 500 doctors, 500 technical slaves of various types, and 400 teachers. Finally, there were 5,000 Lazar people. In addition, there were nearly 7,000 Unsullied, 1,000 sea guards, and 500 merchant guild crew members. There are about 18,500 people on the entire Seeking Island, including a large number of senior talents. Newgate smiled from ear to ear. He had persuaded Jack not to go to Meereen to be the Prime Minister before. It would be great to be the Emperor on Seeking Island. But now, seeing the high-level slaves worth hundreds of thousands of gold dragons being sent back without spending a penny, he suddenly felt that it was not impossible for Jack to stay in Meereen for a while. Newgate is now really immersed in the role of Prime Minister, working hard for the development of Atlantis every day. As the first old man to follow Jack, he is the first person to talk on Seeking Island when Jack is not there. Now that he has someone in his hand, he is going to make a plan overnight. Among the craftsmen are stonemasons, carpenters, and blacksmiths. I bought iron ore before, but now I can make axes and other tools by myself. With more people, we can cut down a lot of trees and develop towards the center of the island. Wood can also make many things. With carpenters, the role and demand of wood will increase greatly. After the forest is reduced, various kinds of stones can be handed over to the stonemasons, and then the task of firing cement and bricks will be handed over to the stonemasons. When he thought of the rapid development in the future, Newgate was very happy, and he was so excited that he couldn't breathe. He quickly suppressed his mood, drank a sip of water, and sighed that he was old after all. Thinking back to the past, he would not feel this breathless situation, even if he moved goods for a day at the dock. At this time, Ratcha found Newgate and handed him a letter. "This is what His Majesty asked me to give you." He said that this is the first pot of gold in Atlantis. Newgate took the envelope solemnly. The current finances of Atlantis depend entirely on the selfless dedication of the good people. When Atlantis first landed in the Seychelles, it was the richest time. At that time, it had a full 5 million gold dragons by robbery and confiscation of Astapa. But now there are only 4.2 million gold dragons left in the warehouse of Atlantis. Just buying food and iron ore and other supplies cost 800,000 gold dragons. Bravas still had 100,000 gold dragons for the warship renovation. After Bravas finished renovating the merchant ships, the 100,000 gold dragons would be gone, and then they would have to order another 195 longships. Only by combining the renovated large warships and longships can it be considered a complete and regular navy. All of this is spending money. The remaining 4.2 million gold dragons seem a lot, but they can't support the rapid development of Atlantis in the future. With the increasing population, salaries, and food are a huge expense. Originally, Newgate planned to wait until the warship renovation was completed, and then go back to his old business, and continue to be a pirate. This matter was also allowed by Jack. In Jack's view, looting can not only get money to feed back to oneself, but also play a good role in training troops. Seeing that Newgate had put away the envelope, Roger was about to leave. Roger, I'll trouble you next. Purchase as much food and iron ore as possible. As for limestone, I'll try to speed up the logging process. There should be limestone on the mountains on the island. Lord Newgate, as for limestone, His Majesty the Sea King has already thought of a way. Let the 12 giant ships other than the Sea King go to Slave Bay for transportation. Hearing this, Newgate nodded. This method can really get through the early stage. Okay, let's do it this way. I will speed up the logging work on the island. When the rainforest area is reduced, limestone will no longer rely solely on the outside world. Roger smiled awkwardly. In fact, there was no shortage of limestone. It was everywhere. But he subconsciously mistook limestone mines for iron mines, and asked around for the whereabouts of limestone mines. Otherwise, several batches of limestone would have been shipped back long ago. Newgate didn't notice Roger's embarrassment. After chatting with Roger for a few more words, he let Roger leave. After Roger left, Newgate took out Jack's envelope and opened it only after confirming that the seal had not been opened. After opening the letter, a line of large characters came into view. Soap and refined salt manufacturing process. This is the money-making process that Jack is going to use first. Among them, the production of refined salt is more convenient because it is close to the sea, and coarse salt can be obtained directly by drying seawater. Then precipitate, filter, evaporate and purify multiple times, and finally add wood ash water, and continue to filter and purify. Then fry the purified material to dry, and you can get refined salt. In fact, this is not refined salt, it can only be regarded as fine salt at most, but it can still crush the salt on the market today. And Jack doesn't have to worry about being sentenced to the crime of killing 9 clans. The profit of the salt trade in the world of Game of Thrones is not high. Selling salt is not a right exclusive to the royal family. Nobles and merchants can sell salt. Chapter 64 The Situation of the Seven Nations. In the original book, when Daenerys negotiated with other city-states, she mentioned that what Meereen could export were salt, copper, Giscari wine, olives, and olive oil. But later, the nobles thought that salt, copper, and wine were not profitable. The biggest reason was that coarse salt and wine could be produced by all city-states, not to mention copper. However, the fine salt made according to Jack's method must be profitable. No matter where it is, the fineness of the salt determines the price of salt. As for soap, it is quite special. Soap not only needs plant ash water, but also animal fat. The best raw materials are fish oil, sheep oil, and lard. Fish oil can be obtained from sea fish, but the fat of fish is too low, and the efficiency of obtaining is not high. The best way to obtain fat is lard and sheep oil, which is efficient to obtain. More importantly, lard and sheep oil can be bought directly. In Meereen, nobles and slave traders will purchase a large number of cattle and sheep raised by the Lazar people. They will eat the fattest parts, and the remaining meat and fat will be sold to free people. As for the lowly slaves, they are only worthy of picking up the bones and swill they throw away. But the pig and mutton fat need to be considered in the long run, which also involves Jack's economic deployment. After carefully reading the envelope in his hand, the various matters are explained clearly in it. Newgate only needs to do what is said above. With a large number of senior butler slaves, many things no longer need Newgate to do personally, and the butler slaves are enough to replace grassroots officials. In addition, the Sea King Island is not open to the outside world now, and the only way to contact the outside world is the giant wave chamber of commerce. So it is more convenient to keep secrets, and Newgate can boldly employ these newcomers. Thinking of this, Newgate turned out a very thick book called My World. It records in detail how to control thoughts and how to keep key technologies confidential. He must study it carefully, and there must be no mistakes in the tasks assigned to him by His Majesty. This My World is a book written by Jack in his spare time, based on his historical experience in his previous life. He is afraid that over time, he will forget some valuable historical experiences. The content of this book includes astronomy, geography, mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, politics, economics, etc. In Jack's eyes, it was like an incomplete encyclopedia. But in Newgate's eyes, it was a Bible, a divine book. Any ruler would have enough to build a huge empire. Westeros. The situation in the Seven Kingdoms is now very chaotic. Since the death of Eddard Stark, rumors about the truth of Robert's will and Joffrey Baratheon's life have never stopped. The final result was that the Stark family in the north declared independence and became the eldest son of the Stark family, the King of the North. Robb Stark led his army south and vowed to avenge his father. Robert Baratheon's two younger brothers also declared that Joffrey was a bastard and was not eligible to inherit the throne. So the second son of the Baratheon family, Stannis Baratheon, became king on Dragonstone Island and wanted to compete for the throne. The third son of the Deer family, Renly Baratheon, became king in the Stormlands and won the support of various families in the Stormlands. At the same time, Renly also married the Tyrell family of the Reach. For a time, he had an army of 100,000 and became the most powerful contender for the Iron Throne. In addition to the above three kings, there is also Joffrey Baratheon, who now occupies the Iron Throne. However, Joffrey is actually the son of Cersei and his brother Jaime, and has the blood of the Lion Lannister. At the same time, Joffrey is also nominally the king of the Seven Kingdoms, but the throne has not yet been firmly established. The last one to be king was the Greyjoy family of the Iron Islands, and the king was Balon Greyjoy. People jokingly called him King Balon. The reason was that he had rebelled once more than a decade ago. At that time, Balon, who proclaimed himself king, felt that his family's Iron Fleet was invincible. The Iron Islands have no land connected to the Seven Kingdoms, and the Iron Throne can't do anything to him. As a result, he was severely beaten by Robert in the north, and his sons died in battle one after another. In the end, only one son was left, and he was also adopted by Eddard Stark. However, Balon also has a daughter Yara Greyjoy, who is no less capable than his male counterparts. Their family emblem is a golden sea monster, so they are also called the Sea Monster family. In just 1 year, 5 kings appeared in Westeros, except for the King of the North and the King of the Iron Islands. The remaining 3 kings claimed that they were the orthodox of the Iron Throne. Unexpectedly, Renly Baratheon, who had the most troops and supplies, became the first king to die. It is said that Renly Baratheon died of strange magic, but more people still believe that Renly was assassinated, not by strange magic. However, no matter what the rumors are, they cannot change the fact that Renly Baratheon died, and Stannis Baratheon obtained the loyalty of the Stormland vassal. The War of the Five Kings became the War of the Four Kings before the chaos officially began, and the Greyjoy family did not have the strength to fight in depth, because of its insufficient land strength. Therefore, there were only 3 real protagonists in the War of the Five Kings. They are the Northern Army led by Robb Stark, which is poorly equipped, and even has farmers holding dung forks, with a total of about 20,000 people. The entire North has a population of only 800,000, plus some hidden populations of about 1 million. The 2% participation rate has caused considerable problems in the grain harvest in the North. Therefore, the North must complete its strategic goals as soon as possible, and then go home to harvest grain. The second is the Westerly army that supports the Iron Throne. The gold mines in the Westerly are extremely rich, so the weapons and equipment of the Westerly army are very sophisticated, and there is no shortage of food and grass. The leader of the Lannister family in the Westerly, Tywin Lannister, is a very outstanding ruler. Therefore, the army of the Westerly is different from the conscripts in other places. They have received orthodox training at Tywin's request, and have very strong combat effectiveness. Finally, there is Stannis Baratheon, who has now gained the support of the Stormlands. The Stormlands were originally the territory of the Baratheon family. It is not rich, but it is not that bad either. So Stannis Baratheon also had an army of 24,000 soldiers and a navy of 4,000 pirates, totaling 28,000 soldiers. And Stannis also had an advantage, that is, his superb combat command ability, and his military talent was definitely one of the best in Westeros. It was a pity that he later met the little devil Tyrion Lannister. In the Battle of the Blackwater River, the confident Stannis was defeated by the dwarf Tyrion, and finally could only go north with thousands of remnants. Chapter 65, Anti-Dragon King Alliance. It is not known whether it is a coincidence or a necessity. The two major gathering places of human civilization in the world are simultaneously caught in a huge vortex of war. Not long after the Seven Kingdoms War in Westeros began, the war in Essos entered the preparation stage. Young Cai united with Nugis, Volantis and several weak free trade cities to form an anti-Dragon King alliance and assembled an army of 300,000 slaves. The news soon spread to Meereen, and Daenerys immediately convened a round table meeting, and all the new power classes in Meereen were present. In the main hall of the True Dragon Pyramid, in addition to the large round table in the middle, rectangular tables were set up on both sides. This was Daenerys' own idea. The Dragon Mother did not have long-term political wisdom, but she still had a lot of cleverness in some things. For example, the long table meeting was set up because Daenerys was afraid that Meereen would become Jack's one-man show, so she did this thing. Dany divided the True Dragon Pyramid into 3 levels of power. The first level was Dany herself, sitting on the throne at the top. The second step is the round table meeting, which is the leadership of Meereen and the royal meeting after the decentralization. The third step is the people in front of the square table, officials, and representatives of Meereen at all levels, and religious forces such as the Green Saint, who belong to the executive class, and have no decision-making power. Now young Cai has united many forces to form an anti-Dragon King alliance. Do you have any countermeasures? Dany asked everyone. The establishment of the Anti-Dragon King alliance was within her expectations, but she did not expect young Cai to win over so many allies in a short time. Volantis, Nugis, Taurus, and even the camel soldiers of Karth. Especially the sea fleet of 300 warships of Volantis, which is definitely not good news for Dany. Once the fleet of Volantis arrives, Meereen's maritime trade will be directly blocked. Everyone in the hall was silent. There was no good way now. They could only fight back and block the water. Moreover, the arrangements made by the Prime Minister before were already very comprehensive, and they had no other way. So many people looked at Jack silently. After all, it was not a good thing for a minister to keep silent. Seeing this, Jack said directly, "Your Majesty, it is not us who should be anxious, but the Slave Owners Alliance. The name of their alliance is the Anti-Dragon King Alliance, because of the 4 dragons in your and my hands. They are afraid that the dragons will grow up, so they want to use the word Dragon King to awaken people's fear and let everyone unite to deal with us. Moreover, the Kether Pass is under our control. The Lazar people are willing to sell us food at 80% of the market price, as long as we provide them with shelter. There are food and people, and we are also purchasing iron ore on the market. Now there are 30% more iron ore merchants coming to Meereen than before. With iron ore, we can make weapons and then arm the Freeman's army." After hearing Jack's words, not only Daenerys was relieved, but also the rest of the people present had a bottom line in their hearts. Many times, Jack is like a reassurance to Meereen, as if as long as Jack speaks, there will be no problem. At this time, Mando said, "Does the Prime Minister mean that, as long as we can delay time, we can win this war?" Everyone was looking forward to Jack's answer, but Jack's next words poured cold water on everyone. "The first 2 years are good for us. We need to train our troops and stabilize the operation of Meereen. But if we still cannot defeat the coalition after the financial crisis, we will collapse without the slave owners sending troops." Jack looked at everyone. "This is the problem before us. The Anti-Dragon King Alliance has just been established. It will take at least half a year to gather together and send troops. In this half year, we must take down young Cai and Astapor. Otherwise, when the Alliance army forms an encirclement, we will really be trapped in an isolated city." Dany sat on the throne with a frown. Jack's meaning is not difficult to understand. Before the anti-Dragon King alliance gathers to encircle Meereen, young Kay and Astapa must be taken down first. Otherwise, they will face the double teaming of the anti-Dragon King alliance's navy and army. But if young Kay and Astapa are taken down first, there is no need to worry about the army. We can only focus on resisting the navy's beach landing. But the problem is, how to ensure that we can gain a foothold in young Kay and Astapa? Excuse me, Prime Minister. Meereen's army only has 9,600 unsullied, and 2,000 of them have to be allocated to protect the Raza. How can they consolidate their rule over the 3 cities of Slavers Bay? The Free Folk Army. The Free Folk Army? Danny asked back. In Danny's opinion, the Free Folk Army was just a decoration, at least for the next 6 months. Made up of a group of ordinary slaves, without decent weapons and armor, such a legion really looked like a decoration compared to the Unsullied. Yes, it's the Free Folk Army. Not counting the Unsullied who are protecting the Lhasa, you still have 7,600 people, 3,200 Unsullied, and the Black Dragon Army are stationed in Meereen. 2,400 Unsullied, and the White Dragon Army are stationed in Yunque, and the remaining Unsullied, and the Green Dragon Army are stationed in Astapa. Excuse me, I don't think dividing the troops is a good choice. The slave owners are very likely to take this opportunity to encircle and suppress the Unsullied in Yunque and Astapa. Barristan was not optimistic about the decision to divide the troops. In his opinion, the most powerful part of the Unsullied is their military formation, and the more numbers they have, the stronger they are. Once the troops are divided, no city-state can withstand the coalition of slave owners. Seeing that Danny was still in deep thought, Barristan continued, Your Majesty, the 3 Free Folk legions have a total of 18,000 people, and each legion has only 6,000 people when separated. Even if the Unsullied are included, there are less than 10,000, and this is not counting the casualties in the attack on Yunque and Astapa, and the slave owners coalition has a total of 300,000 people. Sir Barristan, I think you have overlooked a problem. After we occupied Yunque and Astapa, can't we recruit more soldiers? Besides, we haven't looted the wise lords of Yunque. There must be a huge amount of wealth in their pyramids. Barristan frowned and said, Prime Minister, believe me, you have not participated in the war, so you may not know. Newly recruited soldiers are very easy to collapse, and they can't be compared with normal soldiers at all. Not all soldiers are like the Unsullied Legion. After saying this, Barristan glanced at Grey Worm, hoping that Grey Worm could join him in persuading Daenerys not to disperse her forces. However, Grey Worm pretended not to see it. He did not want to, nor did he have the ability to participate in the decision making. He just had to obey the orders of Her Majesty the Queen. Seeing that Grey Worm had no intention of speaking, Barristan could only pray that Daenerys would listen to his advice. Chapter 66, The Aftermath of Looting. At this time, Daenerys was also in a dilemma. She thought Jack's idea was very good, but she also felt that what Barristan said was right. Seeing this, Jack said directly to Daenerys, Your Majesty, although our soldiers are all born from slaves, the soldiers of the anti-Dragon King Alliance are also slaves. Even if there is some difference, it will not be too big. Hearing Jack's words, Daenerys' eyes lit up. That's right, the soldiers of the anti-Dragon King Alliance are also born from slaves. Even if they are strong, they are not much stronger. And she is still the defender of the city, which to a certain extent smooths the gap in the quality of individual soldiers. In this case, let's do it according to what the Prime Minister said. When does the Prime Minister think we should attack Yunque and Astapa? Barristan looked at Jack helplessly and angrily. Although Meereen quickly stabilized under Jack's policy, in Barristan's eyes, Jack is just a political expert who doesn't understand military operations at all. Little did he know that in Jack's eyes, let alone Barristan, an old man who has always served as a king's guard, the wars in the entire Game of Thrones world are like gang fights. In Jack's impression, the Game of Thrones belongs to the Western Middle Ages. There are no fancy strategies when the two armies fight. They just set up their formations and fight hard. The only one who used tactics was the young wolf of the Wolf family in the north. Robb Stark used different tactics in the process of fighting in the south, and defeated Tywin Lannister in the early stage. It's a pity that Robb has strong military ability, but his political mind is like his father. After Robb killed Karstark and married the little nurse, Robb no longer had hope of winning. Jack ignored Biriston's glare. Jack was never afraid of the struggle for party interests. Now Daenerys' subordinates have been clearly divided into 3 factions. The most powerful one is the bureaucratic group led by Jack now, and the administrative power of the entire Meereen is in their hands. The second is Biriston and Jorah of the Westeros faction. According to Daenerys' appointment, Biriston served as the captain of the Royal Guard, and at the same time, led the Meereen garrison, and was responsible for the security of Meereen. Jorah led the 3 Freeman legions, and served as the general commander of 18,000 people. Dany had never let Jack touch the military power of Meereen, and Jack knew this. Although Dany could let Jack manipulate her at night, she was not ambiguous on fundamental issues. She would not let anyone shake the foundation of her rule. I think the best time to take action is 3 months later. 3 months later, let the Freeman Legion see blood directly, and there will be enough time to attack young Kay and Astapor. Jack was ready to attack the other 2 cities in Slavers Bay in 3 months. By then, the Freeman legions would have been trained for several months, and could see blood. An army that sees blood and an army that does not see blood are 2 completely different concepts. During this period, wood can also be collected to build siege equipment. After all, it is unrealistic to take young Kay from the back door. In the end, siege equipment is still needed. It is now May of 301 AC. After discussing with the ministers, Dany decided to send troops to Yunkai on August 10th and destroy the slave-owning regimes of Yunkai and Astapor within a month. Daenerys' 3 dragons have also become quite powerful and can be used to surprise enemies during sieges. Of the 4 remaining dragons in the world, Drogon is the largest, with a wingspan of 3 meters. It is estimated that in another year, when it grows to 5 meters, it can be ridden. The second is Caraxu, whose wingspan is now 2.7 meters, smaller than Drogon, but because of his slender body, Caraxu looks a whole circle smaller than Drogon. The smallest are Viserion and Regal. Viserion has a wingspan of 2.2 meters and Regal has a wingspan of 2.1 meters. From the outside, there is basically no difference. Meereen began to prepare for war 1 month later, in the morning of June 301 AC. Because at Jack's request, Meereen had a new Dragon King code, so Dany did not have to personally judge miscellaneous trivial matters, and the whole hall looked very empty and quiet. Originally, Dany did not establish a new code after occupying Meereen, which led to constant conflicts among the free people of Meereen, and the 3 dragons of Drogon went out hunting by themselves. So in the original drama, Dany often had to hear disputes and trivial matters in the Pyramid Hall, and her life was quite fulfilling every day. But now most of the government affairs are handed over to the Prime Minister and the Council of Administrators. She only feels fulfilled when she is with Jack at night. What greets her during the day is sitting bored in the Pyramid Hall. Even the happiest time is when someone comes to report on their work, because only at this time can she feel her role. Just when Dany was bored, Biriston came up with someone. The man escorted by Biriston was a former freeman of Meereen, who looked to be 30 years old. Biriston threw the package in his hand to the ground, and the package scattered, revealing the golden mask and dagger inside. Dany's expression instantly changed from confusion to solemnity. She had guessed something. Sons of the Harpy? Dany asked uncertainly. Biriston nodded heavily. His strange whereabouts were discovered by his neighbors. In order to avoid being implicated, and the Golden Dragon reward, his neighbors reported him. After receiving the report, I immediately led people to rush into his house. At that time, he was hiding the mask and dagger. Biriston is now in charge of 3,000 garrisons, which are the police and urban management in later generations. These are 3,000 people who were swept by Jorah. They have received formal training and have some combat effectiveness. There is no problem in dealing with the Sons of the Harpy. Who are you? How many accomplices do you have? Dany looked at the man below. The man did not speak, but just lowered his head and remained silent. Obviously, he was not going to say anything. Seeing this, Dany said with a little anger, since I became the Queen of Meereen, I haven't done anything to you free people. Why do you still risk being killed to become the Sons of the Harpy? It has been several months since Dany occupied Meereen. The conservative nobles are tempting more Meereenese to become the Sons of the Harpy every day. Otherwise, relying solely on the noble's death warriors, Meereen would not have had as many people as shown in the original drama. Hearing Dana's words, the man could not help but shouted angrily, "The lowly slaves you brought, they burned, killed, and looted after entering the city. My wife was tortured to death by a group of thugs, and you still have the nerve to say, stinky bitch, it's all the fault of the lowly livestock you brought." Hearing the man's insults, Dany was stunned at first, and then her face looked a little ugly. When Meereen was captured, not only the Unsullied entered the city, but also the liberated slave army that followed her. Although Dany had asked the Unsullied to maintain order at the time, it was impossible for the Unsullied to watch every corner. Chapter 67 Ivan's doubts. And Dany believed that there must be many such things. All those who were hurt were potential reserve personnel of the Sons of the Harpy. The more Dany thought about it, the uglier her face looked. She suddenly remembered that Jack had told her at the beginning that the people who suffered the most after the fall of Meereen were the original free people of Meereen. The nobles would hide in their own pyramids to avoid the burning, killing and looting after the fall of the city. The slaves were poor and were the objects of liberation, so naturally no one would plunder them. Only the original free people of Meereen would suffer a huge impact. Not only would they be plundered by the slave army following her, but also by the slaves of Meereen. At that time, Jack gave a suggestion, which was to take out some money to make up for their losses, so as to reduce the number of the Sons of the Harpy. But at that time, Dany felt that the original free people of Meereen also oppressed the slaves in the past, so she rejected Jack's proposal. "Take him down for interrogation first," Dany said to Barristan. Barristan took the man away directly after hearing this. Recently, a small number of Sons of the Harpy had begun to move at night. This caused some trouble to the public security work in Meereen, but it did not cause any big waves. Now that a living Son of the Harpy has been caught, Barristan will naturally not miss this opportunity, and will interrogate him thoroughly. After Barristan left, Dany immediately asked Missandei to call Jack over. At this time, Jack was sitting at a custom-made desk in the Prime Minister's tower. He held a homemade stone dumbbell in his left hand, and looked through the taxes of Meereen this month with his right hand. Because Meereen is a city-state, rather than a country, taxes are collected every 3 months. Among them, the taxes of the 1st and 2nd districts are directly handed over to Dany and Jack. The taxes of the 3rd to 13th districts are the responsibility of 11 administrators headed by Manda. After they have collected them, they will hand them over to Jack, and then Jack will hand them over together with the taxes of the 2nd district under his jurisdiction. Including the 2nd district under Jack's jurisdiction, the taxes this time are as much as 200,000 gold dragons. Because Jack proposed a method of work for relief, the free people of Meereen have money to pay taxes, without having to use physical objects, and unpaid labor instead of coins. That's why they were able to collect 200,000 gold dragons, but this number is definitely not a lot. This number is somewhat different from what Jack calculated, and the error is even a bit large. Originally, according to Jack's calculation, the tax revenue of the entire Meereen should be around 300,000 gold dragons after the opening of the arena, but now it is only 200,000. It's easy to guess where the missing 100,000 gold dragons went. But Jack was not angry. In the world of Game of Thrones, corruption is very normal. In the original book, Dario, who collected taxes, even embezzled half of the taxes. The reason why Mando and other administrators did not embezzle more than half this time was to test Jack's attitude and Daenerys' tolerance. Jack touched his chin and did not choose to go to Mando, but was ready to see the sincerity of Mando and others. Because he just remembered that Mando said that a banquet was prepared tomorrow at the Lantis Hot Pot restaurant. Dang dang dang, there was a knock on the door. Jack never worked in the main hall of the Prime Minister's tower, but in the office he chose. Usually, Ivan was waiting at the door. "Come in." Ivan pushed the door open and walked in. "Prime Minister, Miss Missandei said His Majesty wants you to come over." Ivan's expression remained unchanged, but he was a little curious about where Vitaly had gone. She had obviously followed the Prime Minister in. "I see. Wait a moment." Ivan closed the door and said to Missandei outside, "Wait a moment, Miss Missandei, the Prime Minister will be out soon." Inside the house, Jack patted Vitaly's head. Then Vitaly came out from under the table and jumped twice lightly. I'm so tired, my legs are numb from squatting. Jack laughed. Next time I'll put a layer of fur on the floor, so you can squat under it. Vitaly stuck out her tongue. I'll go back to practice swordsmanship first. Since coming to Myrene, Jack has never forgotten Vitaly's position, a capable female secretary. He invited the best swordsmanship teacher and teacher in Slaver's Bay for Vitaly. So Vitaly has at least 8 classes every day to continuously learn swordsmanship and knowledge. Her progress is also very obvious. At least she is not as stupid as when she was first taken in by Jack. Vitaly opened the door and left, and Jack followed her and left, heading for the True Dragon Tower. Ivan looked at the backs of Vitaly and Jack, and looked back at the office in confusion. But before he could think too much, he hurried to prepare a parasol for Jack. Jack is not a hypocritical person. Every time he goes out, he is accompanied by many people, including guards, maids, and servants. Jack soon arrived at the main hall of the True Dragon Tower, and Annie was frowning at this time. There was no one around, so Jack opened his mouth and teased, "Hey, what's wrong with our mother of dragons? Come on, hang my coat on Her Majesty the Queen's mouth. It's so sticky that it can be hung with salted fish." Those present were all Danny's personal maids, and they all knew Jack's temper, so naturally no one dared to move. "If you say that again, I won't let you use it tonight." "Really, can't you be more serious? The Sons of the Harpy's dagger is on our necks. You sound even more indecent." Jack's mouth twitched. "You said that you were not serious. And what do you mean, the Sons of the Harpy's knife is on our necks?" Danny also realized that she was quick to speak and accidentally said some vulgar words. Her face turned red and she said, "It's the Sons of the Harpy, the kind of assassins who wear golden masks and assassinate us everywhere." Jack's mouth twitched. "Seeing your nervous and excited look, I thought you saw a mermaid." I was ready to laugh. "Sons of the Harpy, what are you afraid of?" Jack said speechlessly. "Although they have begun to appear in Myrene recently, they will never become a force to be reckoned with." Jack was very confident because he found that the collective responsibility system had a very high degree of control over ordinary people. The free people of Myrene were all trapped in the collective responsibility system. Especially when not reporting will result in a conviction, and reporting will not only result in innocence, but also a bounty. These assassins who had long pinned Daenerys to Myrene in the original series have only now dared to show up. It's no wonder that Jack doesn't take the Sons of the Harpy seriously, because there really isn't a big threat. Seeing that Jack still didn't care, Dany immediately expressed her guess and worry. "Your previous guess was right. The original free folk of Myrene have really become potential reserve personnel for the Sons of the Harpy." Chapter 68. Unable to escape from the Five-Finger Mountain. Jack couldn't help but look at Dany a few more times, thinking that you are worthy of being her. Only then did he realize that what I said was true. It's been 3 or 4 months, right? I, Jack Poseidon, need someone like you as my immediate superior. If I had replaced him with someone smarter, I wouldn't have dared to do whatever I wanted to embezzle and accept bribes. Don't worry, the Sons of the Harpy can't get out of my hand. If you are really worried, just issue a confession order, say sorry, and give out some money to share. Dany frowned. Will this work? I don't know, I'm just giving you a suggestion. Jack said directly. Dany pursed her lips. If it didn't work, her confession order would be in vain, and her dignity would be damaged in vain. Jack knew that Dany was worried about whether this method would work, so he expressed his opinion. I think it should be useful. Those free people don't care about your dignity. As long as you are nobler and richer than them, and then apologize to them, and give them money, their vanity can be satisfied, and they can also get practical benefits. In this case, who would be willing to risk going to the gallows to rebel, unless it is a life and death feud? Besides, how many people would have a life and death feud? I believe it won't be long before Lord Commander Barristan can wipe out all the Sons of the Harpy. While Jack was comforting Dany, he didn't forget to dig a hole for Barristan. Cry to death, I'm such a good man, I trust Ser Barristan so much. Dany was still a little hesitant after hearing this. It was ridiculous to let the noble Targaryen blood give the Myrenes a guilty verdict. I'll think about it. You go back to work first. Jack made a farewell salute and turned to leave, leaving Dany with a changing face on the throne. After Jack returned to the tower of the Prime Minister, he continued to calculate how much money he could embezzle from various projects in Mirin next month. The next evening, at the Lounder's Hot Pot restaurant. The Lounder's Hot Pot restaurant became popular in Mirin in just 1 month, and one was opened in every administrative district. The novel way of eating and the special soup base attracted many people. Of course, another reason was that it was cheap. It can't be said to be cheap. After all, the same weight of vegetables and mutton in the hot pot restaurant is several times more expensive. But it is not expensive for nobles and merchants, and free people can also afford to eat twice a month. Of course, the most important thing is that Jack escorted all the way and gave the green light. Otherwise the hot pot restaurant would never be able to open and make a profit in such a short time. Jack arrived at the door of the hot pot restaurant as promised, and Mancho was waiting at the front desk of the store. When Jack arrived, Mancho immediately stepped forward to greet him. "Prime Minister, why are you here so early?" "Early? I think it's a little late," Jack said with a smile. Jack seemed to be referring to something. Mando's eyes changed slightly, and he quickly smiled and said, No, it's me who prepared it a little late, but the dishes will be ready soon. Let's go to the box first." Mando led the way in front, but secretly cursed Jack, the little fox. He was young, but he had 2 meanings when he spoke. I don't know who he learned this from. He is really disgusting and difficult to serve. Jack is 16 years old this year, which is considered an adult in the world of Game of Thrones, but he is definitely not young, especially before Jack was 14 years old. He was still a pirate. Jack's experience and past could not be hidden from the great nobles of Mirin, and they even found out about Jack's father in a small brothel in Karth. But because of this, the nobles were puzzled why the son of a pirate who could not read a word could come up with such vicious schemes frequently. First, he divided the noble group of Mirin, and then he used various vicious means to deceive the free people and slaves of Mirin, and the whole Mirin was led by the nose. Jack didn't know what Mando was thinking, but he looked around at the decoration of Lantis. Because he didn't know whether the hot pot restaurant could actually make money, Jack tentatively opened 13 stores. A total of 150,000 gold royals were spent, and now it seems that the money was not wasted. The decoration is really good. After the 2 entered the box, the waiter brought a bottle of wine and a fruit similar to peanuts. Mando immediately picked up the wine and introduced it. This is the Atlantis wine from the Seeking Island, called Poseidon Drunk. A bottle costs 398 gold royals, and the quantity is limited every month. Mando paid 3 times the price to keep this bottle of Poseidon Drunk. Jack pretended to say, "I know." When the owner of the store opened, he gave me 3 bottles. Mando opened Poseidon Drunk with a special wine opener, and the fruity aroma of grapes and the aroma of wine intertwined and permeated. Mando sighed in his heart. No wonder it was sold so expensive. The taste was really intoxicating. Poseidon Drunk was naturally made by Jack. In order to cater to the taste of the Game of Thrones world, Poseidon Drunk was brewed with grapes, and the degree was a little high, but not more than 20. Moreover, after distillation and proportioning, Poseidon's wine has a very obvious feature, that is, it is mellow and very clear. Later, Jack also plans to make high-grade grain liquor and sell it to the north and outside the Great Wall. The environment there is bitter and cold, and high-grade grain liquor that can warm the body should be able to be sold. Even if it cannot be sold, there will be no big loss. Just continue to make wine. Jack only takes the mid to high-end route, and he has no idea about the bottom market. Because whether it is Westeros or Essos, there are a large number of people at the bottom who can only afford a cup of beer with a few copper coins. This kind of beer is turbid and there is no big profit. If Jack makes it according to this standard, it will not be competitive. But if Jack purifies the wine, the cost will go up again, and the price will not be competitive. Therefore, Jack can only take the mid to high-end route, but the mid to high-end route can also make money. The cost of a bottle of Poseidon's wine is only 4 silver coins, and Mirin is in a period of demographic dividend. Every time there is a recruitment, there are people rushing to do it, so the labor cost can be ignored. To put it bluntly, 398 gold dragons. Jack can earn 397 gold dragons. Soon, the hot pot dishes were served. In addition to the mutton that Jack was familiar with, there were many unfamiliar vegetables, and many familiar ones, such as beets and cabbages. Soon, the two began to drink, eating and chatting about the current situation in Myrene. Myrene is now completely on the right track. Except for the Myrenes who originally had families and businesses, they continued to do their old business to support their families. The new free people also made a lot of money from the projects of Kaiser Pass and Salt Land Management, and the two projects can last for 3 or 4 months. In addition, the giant wave chamber of commerce not only opened stores everywhere in Myrene, but also contracted a large amount of salt land. The operation of the shops and the management and planting of salt land not only provided jobs for the new free people, but also eased the financial pressure on Myrene. No city can survive alone. There must be a large number of manors on the outskirts of the city to support the city. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69. Danny is getting smarter. The same thing happened in Myrene, but in addition to the land eroded by salt, even the manors were burned to ashes. Almost all of the fiefs that Danny awarded to Jack were these burned manors. At the dinner table, half of a whole bottle of Poseidon's brew was soon drunk. Seeing that Jack's glass was empty again, Mando was about to pour him wine. At this time, Jack suddenly reached out and pressed the bottle. Mando was stunned and looked at Jack in confusion, not knowing what he meant. Jack smiled and said, "Lord Mando, there is only half of this bottle of wine left. I plan to take it to His Majesty to taste. His Majesty has heard of this fine wine a long time ago. If this bottle of wine is less than half, I will not be able to explain to His Majesty. His Majesty will definitely not have enough to drink. If it is not enough, he may vent his anger on you and me." Jack's words fell into Mando's ears, and he immediately understood what Jack meant. "Prime Minister, is it really appropriate to give the remaining half bottle of wine to His Majesty?" Jack smiled. "Half is enough. With His Majesty's alcohol tolerance, he can only drink half a bottle." Mancho smiled and whispered, "Then, I wonder how much the Prime Minister can drink?" Jack laughed and waved his hand quickly. "How about half and half, Your Majesty?" Mancho laughed. The Prime Minister's alcohol tolerance is really good. At this time, Mancho already knew how much corruption fee he should pay in the evening, and couldn't help but secretly scold Jack for being greedy. "Waiter, another bottle of wine," Mancho shouted outside. Then he said to Jack, "People here have to call waiters. There are many rules, and they must follow the rules after entering. It can be seen how big the power behind them is." Jack glanced at Mancho. Sure enough, the ancients were not fools. But in the eyes of others, his relationship with the giant wave chamber of commerce was indeed too close. Not many people in the whole Myrene and even the world knew Jack's true identity. Speaking of Myrene, only Danny, Jorah, Barristan, Grey Worm and Missandei knew about it. These people followed Danny at the beginning. At that time, Jack did not intend to come to Danny to eat and drink for free, so he did not hide his identity on purpose. But others did not know. Jack specifically told Danny and others to try not to reveal their identities, otherwise he would return to Atlantis to continue to be a pirate. Jack did not tell all about his situation, and Danny and others only thought that Atlantis was a large-scale pirate organization. However, in the face of Mando's temptation, Jack did not hide it and said directly, "To be honest, this Chamber of Commerce is rich and has given me many gifts. Naturally, I have to take care of it." After getting the answer he wanted, Mando immediately knew in his heart and secretly thought that Jack really loved money. If Jack knew this, he would definitely punch Mando, the old man, to death. Atlantis has just started to make money, but there are more places to spend money than Myrene. If he doesn't make more money, Atlantis will become an unfinished building. While Jack was drinking and eating with Mando, Danny summoned Barristan. "Your Majesty, what do you want to talk to me about?" Barristan asked after arriving at the True Dragon Tower. Danny motioned Barristan to sit down and talk. Sir Barristan, I have selected 30 relatively smart young men from the free people of Meereen, and the Lazar people who are allied with us have also sent 20 young men. I need you to train them into real knights who can lead troops to fight. Barristan was a little stunned. This was directly handed over to Jorah to train together. Why did he find him alone? However, although he was a little confused, Barristan did not ask more questions and agreed directly. Sir Barristan, when we were in Karth, Jack said something to me, and I don't know whether it is true or not. Barristan frowned slightly when he heard it, and always felt that something was wrong with Dany. But then Dany told Barristan what Jack said directly. Barristan frowned after hearing this. I didn't pay attention to the affairs of Bear Island when I left Westeros, so I can't be sure whether Jorah Mormont is trustworthy. That's why I need you to train 50 knights who can lead troops to fight for me, and then let them lead the 3 Freeman regiments. Barristan immediately understood that Dany was worried about Jorah's identity, so she was dispersing Jorah's power. He looked at Dany with relief. I see all the qualities of a wise monarch in you, and your talent is comparable to your pioneer ancestors. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, I will train 50 qualified knights for you in the shortest time. Dany quickly denied it, but the smile on her face could not be concealed. Back then, the ancestor Aegon Targaryen conquered Westeros with 3 dragons. She, Daenerys Targaryen, also has 3 dragons, and will definitely be able to regain the Iron Throne. And sometimes after doing exercise with Jack, Jack would tell her some small ways to manage the country and his men while enjoying the afterglow. As the number of exercises increased, Dany naturally learned a lot of practical knowledge. For example, Dany would never have thought of dividing the military power in Jorah's hands. In the original play, Jorah and Barristan could do a lot for Dany, and even served as Dany's advisors on matters of all sizes, and had great decision-making power. But after Jack appeared, he not only replaced the positions of the 2 advisors, but also formed a bureaucratic group for Dany, eliminating Dany's worries about the governance of Meereen. This also led to Barristan and Jorah only being able to develop in the direction of military generals. Barristan was fine. Joffrey dismissed him from the position of captain of the Kingsguard, which made him lose face. He was also Dany's father's Kingsguard, so Dany could naturally use him with confidence. But Jorah was different. His identity could not withstand inquiries at all, because he was originally sent by the Iron Throne to monitor Daenerys. Otherwise, the old lion in the original play would not have directly exposed Jorah's identity after Jorah's rebellion, causing Daenerys to cut off one of her arms. So even though Dany had told Jorah before, I trust you completely, she would not trust Jorah with nearly 20,000 new soldiers. But Dany did not believe that Jorah was an undercover agent. After all, Jack was a liar. But what if Jorah was really an undercover agent? At the critical moment of her fight for the Iron Throne, would he rebel and kill her at the command of the Iron Throne? So Dany had to be on guard. Just like Jack said last night, a suspicious king can live long. After Barristan left, Dany sat in her seat and pondered for a long time. It was more than an hour later that she got up and left. She was going to feed the dragon, imitating Jack's method. Chapter 70. You underestimate him. As the evening wore on, the heat dissipated, but Meereen was still brightly lit, and people were out strolling everywhere. After Jack returned to the Prime Minister's tower, Vitelia ran over immediately. Brother, the Deputy Prime Minister's people came today and sent several boxes of gold, silver, jewelry, and a lot of porcelain. Take me to see. Jack didn't expect Mando to be so efficient. After lunch in the morning, the things were delivered in the afternoon. A total of 5 large boxes of things were delivered, about 50,000 gold dragons. It seems that Mando had understood Jack's intention during the dinner. They can only embezzle half at most, but half of the embezzled half must be handed over to Jack, otherwise no one will be embezzled. In addition, Daenerys granted Jack the right to govern the 2nd district, which does not need to pay taxes, so Jack can get 100,000 gold dragons at once. The prosperity of the 2nd district is second only to the central district directly under Dany's jurisdiction, and the tax revenue every 3 months is about 40,000 gold dragons. According to Jack's speculation, the tax revenue of the central district under Dany's control must be 60,000 to 70,000 gold dragons. According to this calculation, Meereen's tax revenue is 400,000 gold dragons every 3 months, and 1.6 million gold dragons a year. But unfortunately, such high taxes cannot last for a year. After the construction of the Kessa Pass and the artificial diversion canal is completed, the tax revenue will definitely be cut in half. Perhaps after the salt land is replanted with olive trees and grapevines, Meereen's fiscal revenue can be restored to 1 million gold dragons a year. It seems that 1 million gold dragons is a lot, but there are more places to spend money. Not to mention other things, 3,000 Meereen garrisons, 18,000 freemen, and 9,000 unsullied. It costs a lot of money to feed these 30,000 troops. In addition, Meereen has no slaves now, and the servants in the Great Pyramid are not bad. There are also other miscellaneous expenses. It would be good if 1/10 of the tax revenue can be left in the end. What's more, with so much money, Danny may only get half of it in the end. After checking that there was no problem with the property sent by Mando, Jack ordered his servants to deliver the 5 boxes of gold and silver to the warehouse he bought at the dock. In order to send the bribes and filial piety received back to Atlantis more conveniently, Jack bought a large warehouse directly at the dock. Every time the giant wave merchants traveled to and from Meereen, they would bring the money back to Atlantis. And the servants and guards of the Prime Minister's tower were all Atlanteans and were trustworthy. At the same time, Atlantis had formulated very strict criminal laws and surveillance for corruption and bribery. The Seagull organization was a supervisory department that Jack had just established. The joint responsibility system not only caught the son of the Harpy in Meereen, but also Varys' little bird. At that time, Jack suddenly felt that the establishment of the intelligence department needed to be quick, because no matter what era, intelligence occupies a very important position. Therefore, Jack formed the Seagull, which is divided into 2 departments. They are the white gulls that monitor Atlantis, and the grey gulls that monitor the world. Due to the particularity of this department, both departments were established by Jack himself. In order to build a good framework, Jack racked his brains to recall the organizational frameworks of Janaiwi, Hebinte, and bad people in the history of his previous life and novels. Finally, he got the framework of Seagull before his hair fell out. The highest level is the Seagull Commander-in-Chief. Then there are 2 white gull commanders and 2 grey gull commanders. 5 official positions are set up at the level of principal and deputy, a total of 10 people, who are the central power controllers of the Seagull organization. Next is the 1st level Seagull to the 3rd level Seagull, and the 3rd level Seagull is the lowest level. The 1st level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 300,000. The 2nd level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 200,000. The 3rd level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 100,000, and those with less than 100,000 are also under the jurisdiction of the 3rd level Seagull. And finally, there are the 1,000 households, 100 households, and 10 households under these levels of Seagulls. The 10 households manage the brigades and squads, with 5 members in the brigades and 3 members in the squads. The total number of brigades and squads under each 10 household cannot exceed 3. These are all formally organized members. In addition to them, a large number of informants must be developed. Informants are not organized, and their identities are kept secret. They will only receive rewards after providing information. In this way, the basic framework of the Seagull is established. The next step is to select people, build the framework, and slowly fill it with flesh and blood. Jack gave the task of the Seagull Commander-in-Chief to Vitaly. This little girl has grown rapidly under the guidance of various teachers. Her little head is no longer as stupid as before, and her whole person reveals a smart aura. Although the little girl has never been exposed to intelligence work, Jack has given her the framework and ideas, and she just needs to learn slowly. Varys was a slave and an actor at the beginning. Didn't he also weave a big web covering the world, and was called the octopus spider? And Vitaly is much more reliable than the octopus spider. After all, she grew up drinking the milk given by Jack, since she was 11 years old. Needless to say, the relationship between the two is natural. In addition, Jack rarely goes to the battlefield now, and the longsword tsunami that helped him a lot in the past is now just a decoration. Jack not only had tsunami, but also 2 Valyrian swords. One of them was cut off by tsunami when Jack was testing it, and then it was melted into 5 spearheads to make 5 spears. Finally, Jack officially awarded the Valyrian Dragon King armor and tsunami to Vitileel. The meaning of this set of armor and sword is like the Shangfang sword, which is a symbol of Jack's power. As long as he wears armor and holds a sword, it means that Jack is here in person. Jack's full trust also moved the little girl to tears, and she studied harder. At this time, in the mansion of the Gru family, Ivan was complaining to Mando that Jack was a vampire. He just learned that half of the golden dragons that his father embezzled were handed over to Jack Poseidon. Mando's face was not angry at all. "Evan, do you know why we have to give Jack how much he wants?" Evan shook his head. "I don't know, but even if he wants half, we can give less. He doesn't know how much tax we have collected." Mando sneered and motioned Evan to pour him a glass of wine. Evan immediately understood what his father meant and picked up the wine pot to fill Mando's glass. "Yes, it seems that you have learned something from being with Jack. At least your eyesight is much better than before." After taking a sip of wine to moisten his throat, Mando continued, "Son, you underestimate Jack Poseidon. Daenerys has also seen him, even often. Do you think the current policies of Meereen are what she can think of?" Evan's face froze, and he said weakly, "Isn't this what Her Majesty the Queen proposed at the court meeting? We all saw it." Chapter 71 He eats well, then we can eat full. As the words reached his lips, Ewan's voice gradually faded away. Thinking about it, Daenerys really didn't seem like someone who could come up with these ideas. They had already found out about Daenerys' past. She was a princess of the former dynasty of Westeros. Then she was sold to the centaurs by her brother, and later she killed the Horse King because of her chastity. In the end, she almost died in the Red Waste. She was taken in by Karth and involved in the power struggle of Karth. She was almost imprisoned by the wizards with her dragon. But after arriving in the Slavers' Bay, she was full of wits and tricks, especially after taking Meereen. In just 1 month, Meereen began to go uphill. Even the most worried sons of the Harpy were suppressed tightly and did not make any waves. "You mean, these are all Jack's ideas for Daenerys?" Mando snorted coldly. "Who else could it be, except this little fox? He speaks in a roundabout way, and I don't know who his brain is from, with a lot of tricks in his stomach." Ivan scratched his head. "Father, I often follow Jack. Although he has some talent, he is greedy for money and likes women. Could it be that someone else is behind Daenerys?" Mando glanced at his son helplessly and cursed him as a fool. "I have planted several maids in Daenerys' Great Pyramid. According to their information, Jack often stays overnight in Daenerys' room, and his voice can be heard through the door. After that, Jack will tell Dany some ways to govern the country." After hearing this, Ivan dispelled his speculation, but he didn't expect that Jack, who looked lewd and lustful on the surface, actually had so many tricks. Now thinking about it, when he usually served Jack his faint eyes, Ivan immediately broke out in a cold sweat. "Father, why don't you ask His Majesty to let me stop being Jack Poseidon's attendant? Who knows when you might be cut off?" Mando looked at Ivan, who was sweating profusely, and immediately scolded, "Idiot, if I transfer you away today, you will be removed from the position of Deputy Prime Minister tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, those nobles who have long disliked us will tear us to pieces." After that, Mando patted his son's arm and comforted him. "Don't worry, as long as we stand by him, you will not be in danger." Ivan smiled bitterly and thought, "You might as well not tell me so much." Every time he thought of the way Jack looked at him, he felt something was wrong. "Ewan, now you know why we have to pay honestly. We can only rely on him now, but the next generation will be different. If Daenerys can really gain a foothold in Meereen, then our family will be among the power center of Slaver Bay in less than 50 years. This could not be done in 500 years before." When Mando spoke, his eyes were burning with a blazing fire of ambition. Originally, under the suppression of the Great Lords, small nobles like them would never have a chance to turn over in their lives. But then Daenerys liberated Meereen, and the power of Meereen was reshuffled. By chance, he saw the opportunity to reach the top. "Ewan, you have to remember that he can only eat well if he eats well. Half is not much," Mando said earnestly. Just as Mando was educating his son, the garden balcony at the top of the Great Pyramid The sound of iron swords clashing came, and then Biristan suddenly raised his head and picked up the long sword in Dany's hand. Dany sat down on the ground with sweat all over her forehead, and then took the cold water handed by Miss Andy and drank it in big gulps. Your Majesty has made great progress. You now have the basics of killing people, Biristan praised. Dany really gave him too many surprises. Unlike her Mad King father who only knew how to burn people, Dany not only learned knowledge from the Maester every day, but sometimes asked him for swordsmanship at night. In Biristan's view, Daenerys is simply the perfect king. Wildfire King Aerys III Targaryen, Boar King Robert Baratheon, Bastard King Joffrey Baratheon. These kings are not even worthy of carrying Daenerys Targaryen's shoes. However, Daenerys said a little frustrated, but there is a big gap between me and Vitriol, isn't it? Biristan's mouth twitched. Vitriol was Jack's personal maid, and Biristan was one of her many swordsmanship teachers. That little girl is a monster. You don't need to compete with her. She is the most talented swordsman I have ever seen. When she grows up, even the Dawn Sword will not be her opponent. Daenerys widened her eyes in surprise. Is she so talented? Dany didn't expect Biristan to think so highly of Vitaly, and even thought that the little girl could surpass the Dawn Sword. Biristan nodded and said, that's right. She only needs you to explain any swordsmanship, no matter how complicated it is. The long sword is like her arm. This is the realm that many knights pursue, and she is born with it. Vitaly's talent is unique in the world in Biristan's view. When Biristan taught her, he saw the shadow of the water dance sword in her. It is estimated that she had already learned all the water dance sword at that time. Biristan helped Dany up and comforted her. Your Majesty, not everyone has such good talents. You have done a great job. There is no need to be discouraged. Dany patted her, but after getting up and said, I'm not discouraged. After all, I practice swordsmanship to protect myself at critical moments. I'm not needed in ordinary battles, said Biristan. Dany's face suddenly became serious. Biristan quickly replied, I'm here, Your Majesty. In less than half a year, we will go to war with the slave owners. I plan to let you lead the Black Dragon army to garrison Meereen. After thinking about it, Dany still felt uneasy about Jorah, so she decided to let Biristan lead the Black Dragon army. The Black Dragon army has the strongest combat power, and armor and weapons are also supplied to the Black Dragon army first. Then select the best one from the knights that Biristan will train to lead the weakest Green Dragon army. Finally, the White Dragon army, whose combat power is between the two, will be led by Jorah. In case he is not a spy for the Iron Throne, it will not chill his heart. But to be honest, when it comes to leading troops to fight, Biristan is probably the strongest one under Dany. When he was young, he commanded the Battle of the Nine Copper Kings, which was a battle of tens of thousands of people. As for Jorah, he may not have even commanded an army of more than 1,000 people. If she hadn't been worried about her own safety, Dany would have wanted Biristan to go to the Pass of Kether to train. But unfortunately, there were too few people around him who could protect him. Joggo, Aggo, and Rakhero were also sent out by Dany at Jack's suggestion. Dany also has more than 20 Dothraki who can fight. At Jack's suggestion, the three of them each established a small tribe in the Dothraki Sea, and then slowly expanded to the surrounding areas with the support of Dany. Chapter 72 Damn Vampire. On the second day, Biristan set out for the Cather Pass early. The young man sent by the Lazar tribe arrived, and he had to go and claim him, and take a look at how Jorah was training his soldiers. The construction progress of Cather Castle was also a top priority. Fortunately, it took less than a morning to get from Meereen to the Cather Pass. In addition, Biristan was traveling light, and they were all cavalry, so naturally his speed was not slow. After arriving at the Cather Pass, Biristan first looked at Cather Castle. At this time, the progress of Cather Castle was half completed, and it seemed that it should be completed before the slave owners came. At this time, Jorah also received the news of Biristan's arrival, so he took 20 Lazar boys to find Biristan. Although the two were from the same faction of Westeros, their relationship was not very good. In Biristan's eyes, Jorah not only had an unknown origin and purpose, but he was over 50 years old, and was always thinking about his Majesty's health. He deserved to die. Similarly, Biristan was not a good thing in Jorah's eyes. First he betrayed Danny's father, then he was expelled from the Iron Throne, and came to Danny in disgrace to beg for mercy. A stinky old man over 50 actually wanted to compete with him for favor, damn it. But both of them were very loyal to Danny, so they would not show their dislike in person. Sir Barristan, these are the 20 young men sent by the Lazars. I still have to train the soldiers, so I will not accompany you. Jorah's underlying meaning was, these are the people you want. Take them and get out of here. You are not welcome here. But Barristan said seriously, Sir Jorah, Her Majesty is very concerned about the progress and training of Castle. So when I come to lead the people, I will also investigate the situation. Looking at the proud Barristan, Jorah felt very unhappy. But this was a task assigned to Barristan by Danny after all, so Jorah had to introduce the recent situation. The construction of Castle is progressing very fast. There are enough workers, they are paid for meals, and their enthusiasm for work is also very high. If it weren't for the steward sent by Jack, the progress would be even faster. Barristan frowned when he heard this. Why do you say that? When facing Jack, the two of them had surprisingly consistent positions. Originally, these workers worked 12 hours a day, had 3 meals a day, and received 3 copper coins, but the stewards compressed the time to 8 hours. Barristan's doubts became even greater. What's wrong with compressing it to 8 hours? Castle's progress doesn't seem to have any delays. Suddenly Barristan's face changed. Wait, don't tell me Castle is just a showpiece. Jorah's mouth twitched, and he quickly said, that's not the case. Castle uses solid materials, and the strategic materials stored inside are also sufficient. Then why are you saying this? Barristan was a little annoyed. Are you really playing him? Seeing that Barristan was angry, Jorah explained calmly, those stewards compressed the workload from 10 hours to 8 hours, and provided lunch and dinner every day for only 2 copper coins. You mean they are corrupt? What a bunch of vampires. I will go back and ask Jack how he disciplines his officials. Jorah shook his head and continued, it's useless to ask. The money that group of people embezzled was sent to Jack. I have investigated and found that they hardly conceal their corruption. Barristan took a deep breath and said, didn't the free people protest? This is the insidiousness of Jack. He told the free people that he reduced the working hours from 12 hours to 8 hours. At the same time, he changed 3 meals and 3 copper coins to 2 meals and 2 copper coins, but the saved copper coins would be used to buy meat for their meals. The free people were not angry, but grateful to him. In fact, the meals of the free people were originally meaty. It's just a few more fat pigs, and so many people have to share them. Haha. Alas. Hearing this, Barristan sighed. He had never eaten pork when he attended the royal meeting in King's Landing before, but he had seen pigs run. He knew that, even if he reported it to Danny, it would be useless. Jack would say that he shortened the working hours for the free people and saved the copper coins to give the free people extra meals. Anyway, all the accounts in the kitchen were managed by his people, and there was too much room for operation. But even if he knew it was useless, he still had to tell Danny about what happened here, even if it would offend the King's Hand. Jack proceeded. This is the most basic loyalty as a Queen's Iron Guard. If he chose to conceal this matter because of fear of Jack's revenge, he might as well find a place to retire directly after being expelled from the Iron Throne. How long will it take for this to be completed? Barristan stopped asking Jack about the corruption. 3 months at most. With the current manpower and material resources, Castle can be built within 3 months. After all, it is just a military fortress, and there is no need to build a luxurious hall. 3 months. Barristan heaved a sigh of relief. It would take at least 5 months for the slave owners to attack, so there was plenty of time. How is the army training going? Is it going well? Jorah pursed his lips. Not very well, but it basically looks like an army. The infantry training is pretty good. The infantry was trained by the Unsullied, while the cavalry and archers were completely taught by Jorah in riding and archery. The Free Folk Legion was different from the Unsullied Legion. The Free Folk Legion was a composite legion, a real army with cavalry, archers, and infantry. The Unsullied Legion was pure infantry, and only infantry. If Dany relied on the Unsullied to march into Westeros alone, without the dragons and Dothraki cavalry, she would most likely not be able to defeat even one Westerland. Of course, the Unsullied Legion was still very strong, but the Westerland army was excellent in both weapons and equipment and individual quality, and there were thousands of knights wearing heavy armor. After watching the training of the three legions for a while, Barristan had a rough idea in his mind. After all, he was a general who had commanded tens of thousands of people. Barristan saw the situation of the army at a glance. So he decided to go back and ask Her Majesty the Queen to bring the Black Dragon army back to Meereen for training. By the way, he could also teach 50 young men how to lead troops to fight, killing two birds with one stone. Barristan did not leave until noon. Before leaving, he gave Jorah a lot of suggestions. Although Jorah was not convinced, he accepted it. After all, the suggestions made by Barristan were very practical. At the same time, Jorah also realized the lack of his ability. After all, he was just an Earl of Bear Island. Bear Island was so barren that he couldn't even gather 100 conscripts. Chapter 73 Dragon Spirit. The garden at the top of the real dragon pyramid. Dany beside Jack rolled her eyes. No more. Then Dany exited the dragon spirit state. The human light in Drogon's eyes slowly faded, and the wildness took over his brain again. Jack held Dany in his arms and wiped the sweat from her forehead carefully. Not bad. You held on for a few more minutes. If you hadn't refused to communicate with the black spirit during the hatching of the dragon egg, you wouldn't be so tired now. Dany pouted her lips and argued unconvincedly. Then who knows that the dragon egg will hatch? Think about it. When you are dreaming, a giant dragon over 200 meters long is chasing you, and black flames are sprayed from its mouth. Aren't you afraid? Jack immediately remembered the first time he entered the dragon dream. He was also panicked at that time, but fortunately that was the last time. I'm different from you. You are an extremely rare dragon spirit master. Dragon riders like me can only enter the dragon spirit, dragon dream, state once before the dragon egg hatches, but you can enter the dragon spirit state all the time. There is a group of extremely special people in the world of Game of Thrones. They are called shapeshifters. They can invade animals and even human consciousness through their powerful soul consciousness. For example, if they control wolves, they are generally called wolf spirits, and if they control eagles, they are called eagle spirits. Some people with outstanding talents can even control multiple animals. For example, north of the Great Wall of Westeros, there is a six-shaped man named Verami who can control 6 kinds of animals. And Dany is worthy of being the most pure-blooded descendant of the Targaryen in history. According to records, even the Dragon King of Valyria is extremely rare to become a dragon spirit master. Some time ago, Dany accidentally entered the dragon spirit state. Later, after asking Jack, she found that Jack could not enter the dragon spirit state like herself. This made Daenerys very happy. She finally had something that Jack could not compare to. Later, at Jack's suggestion, Dany also tried to establish a dragon spirit link with Viserion and Rhaegal, but both ended in failure. Even after the failure, Viserion and Rhaegal had obvious resistance to Daenerys. It seems that a person can only enter the dragon spirit state with one dragon, and after establishing a relationship, the dragon rider will be alienated by other dragons. Fortunately, Dany entered the dragon spirit state with Drogon at that time. Otherwise, if she chose Rhaegal, it would be a big loss. Rhaegal. After Jack left, Drogon came forward and gently rubbed Dany. After establishing a dragon spirit link and merging their consciousness, their relationship became much closer. Even Drogon's intelligence has improved a lot. Animals will become smarter after being spiritualized, all thanks to the powerful mental power of the skin changer. Dany reached out and touched Drogon's ferocious dragon horns, and then looked worriedly at Viserion and Rhaegal who were fighting for food in the distance. Dany herself could clearly feel that the white and green dragons were much more distant from her. They were still obedient now, because Drogon was their dragon king, or the head dragon. The 3 dragons had lived in groups since birth, and Drogon naturally became the head dragon. They only listened to Drogon, not Daenerys. But dragons are dragons after all. In a few years, it is hard to guarantee that Viserion and Rhaegal, who are increasingly alienated from Dany, will run away from home and become wild dragons. Thinking of this, Danny stroked her belly, and a calculating look flashed in her eyes. Although the witch had tricked her at the time, and said that she could no longer give birth, the truth was far from that serious. Since entering the dragon spirit state with Drogon, the physique of the unburned has been strengthened again. Ordinary flames still make Danny feel burning, but the pain is greatly reduced. Even the burning of the flames can heal her injuries and remove negative states, such as poisoning. But she did not tell Jack about these things, because she also discovered the difference between herself and ordinary people. In the history of the entire Targaryen family, there has never been such a powerful unburner or dragon spirit as her. In other words, she is now capable of reproduction. She has consulted a doctor and there is no problem. If she can conceive Jack's seed, then she can make Viserion and Regal her children's dragons, so that all 3 dragons will have riders. There is even a chance that Jack can be tied to her by her offspring, so that the Iron Throne will be easy. Although Jack is now her hand of the king, the two often communicate deeply, and Danny knows very well that Jack can't always be inferior to others. For example, sometimes it is obviously Dana's turn to ride, but Jack always cheats. Say a real man lives in the world, how can he be depressed and inferior to others for a long time, and then suppress Danny? Many small details can reveal Jack's ambitions, so he is ready to play dirty. Even if Jack goes out to start his own business in the end, at least he should leave 2 children to control Viserion and Regal. Danny really didn't want to find other wild Targaryen bloodlines. Not to mention their character and feelings. It's not certain whether their bloodlines can meet the conditions for riding dragons. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken so long for only her and Jack to hatch a baby dragon. So Jack's bloodline is what Daenerys covets the most. Thinking of this, Danny decided to leave Jack's seed no matter what. As long as the bloodline of her offspring is pure enough, she can hatch dragons through dragon eggs. Even relying on her super strong constitution of the Unburner and Dragon Spirit, it is not impossible for the Targaryen family to rule the 2 continents of Westeros and Essos in a few hundred years and rebuild the Targaryen Empire like Valyria. Drogon looked at his mother, who suddenly started to laugh foolishly, with worry flashing in his eyes, and stretched out his tongue to lick Dany's face. As if to say, don't scare me, Mom. If you are stupid, what can I do? Dany retracted her thoughts. This matter is not difficult to handle, because Jack never takes protective measures, and I believe it won't take long for her to get pregnant. At this time, Jack didn't know that Dany had regained the ability to get pregnant. He would never have thought that the Unburned had such power, almost comparable to the heart of the ocean. Vitelli fiercely knocked the long sword out of Jack's hand, and the wooden sword was pressed straight against Jack's throat. Jack quickly raised his hands in surrender, and Vitelli smiled gently. How about it? I'm awesome, right? Awesome, awesome. Tell me, what do you want? Just now, Jack and Vitelli made a bet. The 2 of them had a one-on-one duel, and the loser had to satisfy one of the other's requests. Vitelli's eyes rolled, and she immediately showed a malicious smile. She patted her tight thighs. Tonight, if you can hold on for an hour, I won't ask for anything. If you can't hold on, then you have to increase the request to 3. Jack's face darkened. You stinky girl, you have some fancy ideas. Chapter 74. Laser seeks students. In the evening, the blood-red setting sun enveloped the free city state of Meereen, and both sides of the city's avenues were full of free people going home from get-off work. Suddenly, there was a commotion, and many people who were eating onlookers looked in the direction of the sound. It turned out that Barristan had returned with the laser exchange student. A few days ago, Dany released the news that she would form a night group of 50 people. Excluding the 20 laser students, there were 30 places left to be selected from the civilians and nobles of Meereen, and everyone under the age of 18 could participate in the selection. At that time, some neutral Meereen nobles sent all their second sons over, and there were even more free people participating in the selection. In the end, the selection results came out, and only 6 free people were selected, and the remaining 24 places were all for the nobles. This incident also caused a lot of discussion among the free people at the time, wondering if there was any shady deal. But the fact is that the physique of the noble boys is better than that of the free people, and they are well nourished and do not lack the most basic education. Giving 20 places to the lasers at that time also caused dissatisfaction among some nobles and commoners. Many nobles whose second sons were not selected believed that the lowly lasers were not worthy of the opportunity to be knighted by Her Majesty the Queen herself. So as soon as the 20 laser boys entered the city, they attracted a crowd of onlookers, wanting to see if these lasers had 3 heads and 6 arms, and could directly get 20 places. The lasers finally got this opportunity, so they naturally sent out the 20 most outstanding boys. Borhasi looked at this group of excited passers-by and couldn't help but curiously asked Biristan if they were too popular. Biristan raised his eyebrows. He had never seen such a confident laser. In his impression, lasers were all submissive. Of course not, they want to hit you. If they hadn't considered that they would be fined by the Ministry of Health established by the Prime Minister's tower for littering, they would have thrown rotten leaves and fesses long ago. Borhasi was stunned and a little puzzled. Sir, may I ask why they are so hostile to us? Didn't Her Majesty form an alliance with our laser tribe? Biristan was in a good mood, so he explained, it is precisely because of the alliance that His Majesty showed great sincerity and gave you laser people 20 places. Seeing that Borhasi was quite smart, Biristan gave him some more advice. Don't think that you are just the most basic knights, but the significance here is very important. Once you have made great contributions in the process of liberating the entire slave bay, His Majesty will naturally confer the title. In other words, you are the candidates for the future dukes, marquesses, and earls of Slave Bay. Borhasi's eyes flashed with a gleam. He was 18 years old this year. In this short 18-year career, the town built by his family had suffered hundreds of attacks. Every time the town had just accumulated some savings, the centaurs would come to plunder, the livestock were swept away, and the people were sold to slave owners like livestock. When he was 9 years old, a Dothraki broke into his room, but he was attacked with a dagger and died on the spot. From that day on, he understood that the centaurs would die, and the centaurs were not invincible devils. They would die if their throats were pierced by a dagger. So Borhasi was determined to change the situation of the laser people. He believed that if this continued, the laser people would sooner or later be wiped out by other races. In the following 9 years, he kept persuading his father to rise up in resistance. But his father always said that for the survival and continuation of the tribe, he must not resist. Just when Borhasi was about to accept his fate, Daenerys' messenger arrived. The messenger said that the Dragon Queen was willing to form an alliance with the laser people and send the Unsullied to provide shelter for the laser people's towns. At that time, Borhasi was ecstatic. With the protection of the Unsullied, he didn't have to be afraid of the looting of the centaurs. But later Borhasi discovered that the Dragon Queen's Unsullied only provided shelter for the towns, and many small tribes did not have the strength to build towns, so they could only continue to endure the looting. Until some time ago, the Dragon Queen was going to select 20 people from the laser people to be canonized as knights and teach them how to lead troops in battle and govern the country. Therefore, the 20 strongest laser tribes all sent their best second sons to Meereen. Borhasi even gave up the right to inherit the tribe and volunteered. Although the laser people are gentle, even cowardly, they are not stupid and naturally have their own thoughts. The population of the laser people has dropped from more than 10 million at the beginning to less than 2 million now. The 5 largest tribes understand that if they continue like this, the race may really perish. And if you want the race to be immortal, there are only 2 ways: find someone to rely on or resist yourself. It is not realistic to seek refuge from someone, because this will offend the fierce Dothraki, or even offend the GIs in Slavers Bay. If you rise up to resist, no one is willing to ally with the cowardly laser people. Just when the laser people's top leaders were thinking hard, a Dragon Queen who liberated slaves suddenly rose in Slavers Bay. What made the laser people even more ecstatic was that when they were still hesitating whether the Mother of Dragons was willing to form an alliance with the laser people, the other party's envoys had already arrived at the laser plane, and the conditions given were very sincere. Not only did they have the protection of the Unsullied, but they were also willing to purchase food at a high price, and finally promised to help the laser people build cities in the future. So the laser people also showed their sincerity. That is to lower the price of food. If the laser people have anything to offer, it must be food. The centaurs are not good at cooking carbohydrate staples, so they are more likely to plunder livestock and people, so the Laza people still have a lot of food. Borhasi clenched his fists and made up his mind that he must become the greatest duke. When he is strong enough, he must kill all the Dothraki and destroy the country and the race. Barristan did not see the change in Borhasi's expression, and he was still talking about the etiquette that he needed to pay attention to when he met his majesty later. Soon Barristan led everyone to the bottom of the True Dragon Pyramid. Borhasi looked at the current True Dragon Pyramid with a shocked face. A black dragon was carved on the entrance gate, and above it were 3 large characters True Dragon Hall cast in gold. Borhasi had seen the Great Pyramid when he followed his father to sell grain. At this time, the bronze statue of the harpy on top of the pyramid was replaced with a dragon statue. And not only on top of the pyramid, almost all the portraits and sculptures of the sons of the harpy in Meereen were replaced with black dragons. Barristan looked at the 20 people behind him, and after reminding them again not to offend Her Majesty the Queen, he led a few people into the True Dragon Hall. Chapter 75 Knighthood. Your Majesty. Barristan bowed. The 20 people behind him quickly imitated Barristan and shouted, Your Majesty. Very good, you look very energetic. Danny carefully looked at the 20 young Laza people below. Each of them was very strong and not at all cowardly, just a little nervous, but nervousness was normal. Don't be nervous. Since you can come to Meereen, it means that you are the best. I will canonize you as my knights. If your talent is good enough, you will show your strength in the next liberation war and become barons, viscounts, or even earls. After speaking, Danny came to the stage and took the long sword that had been prepared long ago from Miss Andri. Coming to Borhasi at the front, looking at the young man in front of him who was trembling with excitement, Danny said solemnly, Kneel down. Borhasi immediately knelt on one knee, waiting for Danny's canonization. What's your name? Your Majesty, my name is Borhasi, and your reputation is well known. Borhasi said loudly. Barristan's eyes were full of admiration. He felt that this young man was very good from the very beginning. If his swordsmanship was good, he might consider teaching him all his skills. Danny was also very satisfied with Borhasi's performance, so she directly put the long sword on Borhasi's shoulder and began the ceremony of canonization. Borhasi, I canonize you as a free knight in the name of the Queen. From today on, are you willing to protect the weak, fearless of difficulties, brave and fearless, just and kind? Are you willing to be loyal to your queen and her heirs forever? Are you willing to give everything for your queen? I'm willing. I will give you everything I have, my long sword, my soul, everything I have. In order to show enough loyalty, Danny canonized everyone personally, which also made these Laza people feel respected. At the same time, it also made them feel unhappy because of the free people when they entered the city. After the canonization was completed, Danny said, From today on, you are free knights under the Queen of Meereen. But you only have the title. Next, I hope you can learn from Sir Barristan and become a real knight. Although Sir Barristan is old, he was the most powerful knight in Westeros when he was young, and the captain of the King's Guard. Finally, Daenerys did not forget to praise the old man Barristan. This made Barristan very happy, and he immediately promised that he would train these young men wholeheartedly and provide Danny with a group of perfect knights. Then Barristan brought these young men to the outskirts of Meereen. There were already 30 people here who were knights selected from Meereen. Danny had already canonized them. After entering the camp, a young man came up immediately. Sir Barristan, you are finally back. I thought you were going to spend a night in the barren land of the Laza Plain. Hearing this, Borhasi behind Barristan frowned. The other side knew that Barristan was with Laza people, but he still spoke so rudely. A square-faced boy behind Borhasi couldn't help but step forward to argue, but was stopped by Borhasi. Borhasi shook his head and signaled Rory to calm down. Although Rory was a little impulsive, he still listened to his elder brother. Borhasi was a very shrewd man. Although Laza was now the Queen's ally, he would not make a decision without authorization before figuring out the identity of the boy. When Abdulaziz Laza saw a group of Laza boys angry, the smile on his face became more presumptuous. Barristan saw this and immediately said, Abdul, you are a knight now. Don't say such things in the future. Besides, I went to the Kaiser Pass, not the Laser Plains. Where there are people, there are fights, especially when there are clear divisions within a group. As the second son of the Glazer family, Abdulaziz's status is not as good as his brother, but it is still very important. After all, the Glazer family is the third largest noble in Meereen. After the ancient Gis Empire was destroyed by Valyria, the founder of their family participated in the construction and establishment of Meereen. Moreover, their family is a neutral faction, and Dany has always wanted to win over the Glazer family. It is precisely because of this that Barristan treats Abdulaziz Glazer more friendly. Then Barristan took Borhasi and others to get war horses, armor and weapons. When Borhasi passed by Abdulaziz Glazer, he suddenly said to Rory, "Don't let them conflict. The oath that Her Majesty made when she canonized us must not be forgotten, otherwise, wouldn't we become knights who are in two minds?" Abdulaziz Glazer's face sank. He didn't expect that the sheepman who was only worthy of being a slave before would dare to mock him. "Humph, as long as you are still in Meereen, just wait and see. I will let you go home in disgrace." Abdul thought viciously in his heart. He was ready to teach this ignorant sheepman a good lesson in the next training. He wanted to let these sheep people know that they, a group of nobles, had been exposed to higher education since childhood, and they were definitely not comparable to the stupid and barbaric sheep people. With this in mind, Abdul returned to his tent. He decided to increase the amount of training tonight. Then he would teach the arrogant Glazer a lesson in the next combat training. On the way back, Abdul met his good brother Stavin Hazaka. Compared with the arrogance of Abdulaziz Glazer, Stavin Hazaka was much more rational and smarter. "You shouldn't go. It will only make Sir Barristan have a worse impression of you," Stavin said. Abdul sneered. "I hope that old man is as powerful as Her Majesty the Queen said." Stavin sighed. Abdul grew up with him since childhood, and he knew the other's character too well. But it was Abdul's character that made him defend him desperately when his elder brother wanted to kill him out of jealousy. Seeing Abdul turned and left, Stavin hurriedly chased after him, saying as he walked, "I inquired about it when I visited Prime Minister Jack in the Prime Minister's tower the day before yesterday. Sir Barristan was one of the most powerful knights in Westeros when he was young." Prime Minister Jack? The politician who only knows how to lick His Majesty's boots and values money more than anything else? Do you think I will believe what he said? Stavin's mouth twitched. In fact, the Prime Minister's strength may be far beyond our imagination. When I went there, he was lifting dumbbells as big as your head. Abdul stopped abruptly, turned around, tilted his head, stared at Stavin and asked, "You fucking didn't lie to me?" Then he gestured with his hands. "Is my head so big?" End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.